President Khalid Iqbal Sahab, Mansoor Kader Dar Sahab, Acting Chairman Policy and Research Forum, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and our keynote speaker, Javed Jabbar Sahab, former Federal Minister and Member Senate of Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, the agony through which Kashmir has been going through for decades is not anything new to any one of us. Yet the dynamics of this issue needs to be understood, particularly in the context of current international atmosphere. This will help in knowing that Kashmir is not merely a territorial dispute between two countries. Rather, it's a humanitarian issue and simultaneously has implications for the region and the world at large. During the first sitting of this day-long seminar, we have with us eminent scholar, strategist, and author Javed Jabbar, who has served as Federal Minister and has contributed to policy-making process in various capacities, including as a Member Senate of Pakistan. He will be giving us the keynote speech of the seminar. But before I call on Javed Jabbar Sahab for the keynote, I shall request Executive President, Institute of Policy Studies, Mr. Khalid Rahman Sahab, to tell us more about the objective of this seminar and what the worthy audience of this session should expect to listen. Ladies and gentlemen, Khalid Rahman Sahab.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Janab Javed Jabbar Sahab, Mansoor Kader Dar Sahab, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all on behalf of Institute of Policy Studies, its team, and on my own behalf to this extremely important seminar on Kashmir, the issue, global scenario, and imperatives, policy imperatives. Those of you who know IPS and its last over 40 years journey in promoting policy-oriented research would be well aware about the particular interest of IPS in the subject which we are discussing today. Besides holding scores of seminars, IPS has produced numerous reports and a number of books on the issue of Kashmir, its dynamics, and ways of seeking a sustainable solution. The reasons, ladies and gentlemen, for IPS interest in this subject are very obvious. We regard our contribution, whatever little it could be, on the issue of Kashmir and the struggle of Kashmiris as one of our key responsibilities based on at least 5 important considerations. First and foremost, we are part of the global community, and Kashmir is a human issue directly impacting the lives and involving the future of more than 14 million people. Second, we believe in the justice-based system, and on the basis of international laws, right of self-determination is the primary requirement of the justice. Thirdly, we are Pakistanis, and it is an unfinished agenda related to the creation of Pakistan. Fourthly, we are Muslims, and the issue has a religious dimension as well, since we share the same religion with the Kashmiri people. And finally, if not addressed justly, the issue has the potential of leading to a war with nuclear implications, which would certainly have regional and global consequences. Now, when we talk of something which has so many stakes including global implications, the issue of global governance and the role of UN becomes extremely important. It is in this context that I would like to recall that the highest global body, the United Nations Organization, has only a few days back entered into the 75th year of its establishment. The member states of the apex body, in this connection, have adopted a resolution on June 14, 2019. The resolution outlines the modalities for a one-day high-level meeting of the UN General Assembly to mark the 75th anniversary of the UN in 2020. To be exact, this will be held on Monday, 21 September 2020. Let me also highlight the theme for this high-level meeting. It says, "The future we want," and I have highlighted this over there also. "The future we want, the UN we need," reaffirming our collective commitment to multilateralism. Indeed, a genuinely inspiring theme. Yet the question in the context of today's seminar is, what such affirmations of the collective commitment to multilateralism, that is, acting cooperatively with other states, would mean to Kashmiris and the Kashmir issue, an issue that we all know is one of the oldest issues on UN agenda. In this backdrop, ladies and gentlemen, the question as to how the situation in Kashmir is emerging today or will emerge in the coming days may be seen in two ways. In the perspective of last around 4 months, 1/3 of a year, or in the context of last around 75 years, 3/4 of a century of UN existence. Whichever way we look at it, it conveys three key messages. That is, Indian consistent denial to fulfill its own commitment to the Kashmiris and the world. Continuity of the Kashmiri resistance, and we know how many generations have remained involved and are continuing this resistance, and the failure of the global system to redress the injustices being done to the Kashmiri people and to check Indian illegitimate moves, including gross human rights violations. Throughout the last over 7 decades, and now by its move on 5 August 2019, India has challenged the international community by defying the global rule-based system, if there is any. India has been trying to unilaterally alter the status of a clearly defined disputed area and the fate of 14 million people. What may happen now? Kashmiris have time and again proved that they are not going to compromise on their fundamental rights. It suggests that they will continue to resist to the unjust Indian moves. Whereas the Modi government seems to have played its last gamble. In all probability, it will continue to insist, and there is a danger that out of frustration it may go to any extent in suppressing the Kashmiris. So what can be done? This brings us to the question of the global governance as well as the role of the international community. The response from the global community, which is the essence of multilateralism, is the key. One is encouraged to see post 5 August global response, much more to what India was probably expecting. A discussion in the United Nations Security Council meeting, Statements by Chinese, Malaysian, as well as the Iranian and Turkish leadership. Several members in the British and EU parliaments, as well as a few in the US Congress, have expressed worries. There have also been hearings in the 2 US Congress committees. Some other top leaders, though were not straightforward, but their comments did communicate a sense of concern and urgency. UN Secretary General has spoken a couple of times, and on 21st November, a key UN committee has unanimously passed a Pakistan-sponsored resolution reaffirming the right to self-determination for peoples subjected to foreign and alien occupation. By the way, this is not the first time, it has happened earlier as well. Civil society and human rights organizations, including the highest body, United Nations Human Rights Council, and some even in India, have also voiced their concerns. While the Indian government has made every effort to hide the facts, many in the international media are forthright in depicting as to what is happening on ground. All this is encouraging, but is it enough? Obviously not. A sustainable and a just solution requires a lot more to be done by the international community in general and by all those who seek for a better world. A world which is founded on a global governance system and which is genuinely based on and sincerely concerned for rule of law. While the journey is not short, it's quite long, in the immediate perspective, those who feel concerned need to double their efforts to put sufficient amount of pressure on India to immediately lift curfew, release all political prisoners, remove all restrictions on communication, and withdraw all its security forces back to barracks and then out of Jammu and Kashmir. We need to put sufficient amount of pressure on India to stop any move to change the demographic composition of the J&K population and work out modalities for plebiscite under the UN auspices to the Kashmiri people. Thus, Kashmir today stands as one of the most pressing issues in the global scenario. It is a test for all those who claim to be peace-loving and champion human rights, be it individual, communities and nations or global institutions. We expect that while deliberating upon various dimensions related to the Kashmir issue in a global scenario, we would be able to draw approaches to create an environment where it becomes mandatory for all to put their weight in favor of a just solution, which could be the only sustainable solution. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, sir. I wouldn't say much to introduce our keynote speaker for today, as you already have his brief introduction with you, but I would certainly say that being involved in building national narratives and policies, he perhaps is the most suitable person to enlighten us on the topic of this seminar, and that too in a limited time available to us. I request former senator, former federal minister, author, intellectual, statesman, Javed Jabbar Sahab for his keynote speech. Sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, dear, for your very gracious introduction. Thank you, Khalid Rahman Sahab, for your very cordial and warm invitation. It's a privilege to be here. Mansoor Dar Sahab, Thank you also for being here. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, and a special welcome to friends from overseas who have traveled long distances to be with us today on this very important occasion. It's truly a privilege to be associated with the Institute of Policy Studies after having listened to that very succinct, concise and very insightful presentation as an opening statement from Khalid Rahman Sahab. And only focuses our mind on the age of IPS. MashaAllah, turned 40, and it's, well known, life begins at 40. So the best part of IPS's work lies ahead, even though you've done so much already in the past. But when we talk about age, I am tempted to always remember that in terms of individuals, no man is ever over 40, like no woman is ever over 30. And you look like you're 21 or 22, Khalid Sahab. So, mashallah. No, I prefer these. And it's good to see that there is, IPS believes in some kind of gender balance, fortunately. It's not a male-dominated institute, I hope. It's very evident here. And one hopes that after reflecting on the issues that Khalid Sahab has identified, I will simply add to, or not add, contribute my confusion. Where do we begin? How do we address an issue that has been with us now for over 70 years? First of all, I want to begin by complimenting the people of Indian Occupied Jammu and Kashmir. There are few examples in contemporary history, or recorded history for that matter, where a people face troops who represent perhaps the most militarized region in the world. 500,000 troops since 1989, 1990. Specifically unnumbered or uncounted troops since the last few years, and particularly since the 5th of August. One estimate is 900,000, another is 800,000. 800,000 troops. And look at the fortitude with which they have maintained their identity and their resistance. It's not easy to do that when you know that thousands have disappeared. Thousands of promising young lives totally removed from their families. Hundreds, uncounted numbers of women raped, abused. So many hundreds blinded. And the people continue to maintain with pride their identity. And fortunately, even though their compatriots in Azad Jammu and Kashmir have not had to suffer that kind of cruelty and barbarity, one also salutes the people and the government of Azad Jammu and Kashmir for standing by their brethren, for being at one and not just turning their faces away, remembering. And remembering is so important to human history. And the people of Pakistan. I mean, which other state, which other Muslim state? There are 56 members of the Organization of the Islamic Conference. And of course, our proximity to Kashmir, our congenital connection with it, enjoins a special responsibility on Pakistan. But there was no shortage of things that Pakistan could do with its time and its resources. But we have never faltered. We have never faltered for 72 years. In one way or the other, we have stood by them. So salutes all around. And after the 5th of August, I have no personal or political affiliation with this current government. In some respects, I am critical of it. But truly, after the 5th of August, I think one needs to commend them. The Prime Minister has led a very robust, a very vigorous articulation of the cause. And the splendid manner in which he did it at the United Nations General Assembly brings to mind that few leaders, if any, have done it in the manner that he did. And the foreign minister and other leaders together. So for the past 3 months, this particular government has not only sustained Pakistan's historical commitment, but has raised it to a new level. And the response that Khalid Sahab has very correctly pointed out, I don't need to go through. But it is time to also take a candid appraisal. Where do we go from here? We have to look at the next, perhaps the next 70 years. I hope it is 7, not 70. But who can predict? No one knows what the future is going to bring. Not even the most astute analysts in the CIA or the National Security Council of Washington, D.C., equipped with millions, billions of budget money for research, analysis, hundreds of spies in the Soviet Union could predict what happened in 1990-91. We can't predict that. We don't even invest a fraction of what they did. But we can look at present trends and see where are they likely to go. Broadly speaking, perhaps in 4 parts we'll have to look at it. First, internally, Pakistan itself, the custodian, the sole custodian of the Kashmir cause. And not through arrogance, but with humility. We are, in a sense, the sole custodian as a nation state. And if we are to do justice, we have to build solidarity, internal solidarity within Pakistan about our strategy. And one is not being hypercritical and partisan, but I'm intrigued as to why a few weeks ago a whole movement is launched in Pakistan to remove the present government using the very title, Azadi, freedom, which is the sine qua non of the movement in Indian Occupied Kashmir. They could have labeled it some other term. I mean, that term must have gladdened the heart of the oppressors, deflecting attention. But that brings to mind the paradox of democracy. Is it possible to build solidarity with party-based democracy? I mean, we have to live with party-based democracy. Humanity has not invented another form of fair democracy. But the party basis of democracy is the poison of democracy. It divides people. The way Republicans talk about Democrats and vice versa in the United States today, or the way the Tories and the Labour Party talk about each other in the UK, the way the Congress and the BJP, except on Kashmir, talk about each other, my God, you must be talking about enemies, not fellow citizens of the same country. And this is democracy, refined by the West, and we are supposed not to question its essentials. But in Pakistan, can we do justice to the cause of Kashmir when we are so bitterly divided? If we start using the very term that should be reserved for the people of Kashmir as a domestic issue, needs to be thought through. But perhaps equally, Pakistan needs to transform itself. We are a delightful people, one of the most compassionate on earth. The poor in Pakistan give more frequently to the other poor than the rich do. The rich give more. But this is remarkable about the people of Pakistan. कि गरीब आदमी दूसरे गरीब को ज़्यादा frequently देता है. Wow. And the ingenuity of our people. Barely 52% literacy, it's so intelligent. So many other virtues. And yet we are riven by very deep problems of our society, of our state, riven whether by corruption, by misgovernance, by always punching under our weight. A country of 220 million people with a GDP of just $300 billion. It should be a $1.2 trillion. We need to transform ourselves. Because we are living next door to a country that has grabbed Kashmir, which is 5 times to 6 times our size, whose economy, whose armed forces, whose territory, whose coastline are all in favor of might is right, which is the golden rule for international relations. How do we match this? Do we succumb to some permanent sense of inferiority? That would be negating the very rationale for Pakistan. No. We are the only country in South Asia that can thumb our nose at the Indians, and the Indians know it, and that's what bothers them. They're the only country in this region that will not submit to Indian hegemony is Pakistan. But is that enough? We need to transform ourselves. And let me use a term which will not go down well initially if I use it with the Islamic purists. I think Pakistan should become the Israel of South Asia. Not in the religious sense, not in the barbaric sense with which Israel grabs Palestinian land, but in the dynamic sense. What a country! 9 million people, 9 million Israelis. There is a total of only 14 million Jews in the whole world. 14 million. And there are 430 million Arabs in 22 countries. And there is this country of 9 million that has paralyzed 430 million Arabs. My God. And it's not just because America is its patron saint, which it is, but the Israelis themselves are democratic, they are very studious, they are very intelligent, very well organized, technologically extremely advanced. Look at their agriculture. In an arid country, they have made agriculture a basic part of their economy. My God. If Pakistan has to learn a lesson on how to use human resources to its advantage, that's the model to follow. And apart from Singapore, of course. But if we do, we will then have a capacity to deter India and challenge India without becoming violent, without unleashing war, in a way that India will not be able to afford the arrogance with which it acted on the 5th of August. If those are our internal challenges, there's also a bilateral challenge. How do we maintain a relationship with India? Do we declare it to be an enemy country, no contact, no ambassador, no high commissioner? Permanent? Is that permanent? Is that good? Is it in our vital interests? No. The hard, unpleasant fact is we cannot afford to cut off from India. We can't change our geography. But controlled and well managed, tense, but not violent bilateral relationship. It will require dexterity. It will require the magnanimity from India, which we cannot expect. It never has been magnanimous. It will require us not to compromise on Kashmir. There is no question of compromise. And yet, flexibility, which is not the same as compromise. As a member of the longest running Track 2 dialogue with India, now in its 26th year, suspended since Modi has not allowed the Indians to re-invite us for the last 18 months. They were here in April last year. And it's a non-media reported Track 2 dialogue. That's why it survives for 26 years. Neem Rana. We worked on the 4-point formula with General Musharraf and Manmohan Singh and Atal Bihari Vajpayee were about to agree to how to go forward. And if it hadn't been for General Musharraf's dismissal of Iftikhar Chaudhry and the whole destabilization, that could have been the way forward. So We need to work on that. We also need to reach out to the people of India. How we do it is very difficult, but we can do it, remembering that in the 2018 election, 64% of voters voted against the BJP. The BJP increased its vote share from 31% to 36%. But that still leaves 64% of Indian voters rejected RSS, rejected Hindutva, rejected BJP. What are they doing? Have they all surrendered to Modi? There's scope, there's potential to reach out to them. Not asking them to be disloyal to their country, but letting them understand Pakistan better and our viewpoint better. Third, the regional approach. India has managed to neuter SARC because obviously it couldn't face Pakistan in SARC. So that's a bitter reality. Hegemonism has replaced regionalism in South Asia. That's very clear. And we have to live with that till we maintain our identity and we become the powerhouse of South Asia. But that should not be leading us to defeatism. We have much more to do to build bridges with Bangladesh, repair our relationship with Bangladesh. We have no track to dialogue with them. We have a completely unfriendly, mutually suspicious kind of relationship. What a tragedy it is. There's no track to dialogue with Bangladesh and Pakistan. So much to do. There's a need to strengthen dialogue with Sri Lanka, with Nepal, however small or irrelevant they may be to Kashmir, they are part of the region. We need to work much harder with Iran, right next door, and yet, just take one example. We are so obsessed with that trash from Bollywood. And here is Iranian cinema producing such excellence, unknown to most Pakistanis. Right next door, Iranian films have managed to secure over 12 Oscar awards from a country which treats Iran as an enemy. The Americans are obliged to acknowledge the excellence of our neighbors' capacity for creativity, and most Pakistanis are sublimely unaware. That's on the cultural front. But West Asia, Turkey, oh, what great and glorious friends they are. In the Gulf, despite two countries handing out their highest civil award to Mr. Modi, despite that hypocrisy and self-centeredism, need to do much more on the regional level. And then finally on the global level. Yes, it's very encouraging, the signs that are now coming about the UN Third Committee adopting a resolution, a panel in the US Congress doing this, the European Union making sounds, very good, but nowhere far enough. This is a world beset with crises. Syria, the fallout from immigration, the fallout from climate change, Hong Kong. Hong Kong gets much more coverage on the BBC and The Economist, what have you. There are a few thousand people, tens of thousands. And here is a case where 14 million, 8 million people locked up for 110 days or whatever, barely a mention. There's much more to be done. And there's a need to invest hard cash. We have to put our money where our mouth is. And we've never done it. Public diplomacy, to reinforce official diplomacy. Both non-media tactics and strategies and media strategies. We just haven't invested in media. Even if the Prime Minister made a spectacular speech, what happened? How many people actually in Europe, in Spanish-speaking in South America, and Japan actually heard it? Probably a minor fraction of a percentage. Because global media needs money for its time and its space. I estimate, and I'm just taking a ballpark figure, even though we are running a deficit and we are short of cash, we should be spending about $100 million over the next 10 years, $10 million a year minimum, to buy full-page ads in the New York Times, just run pictures, just run quotes from the UN Human Rights Council report. Don't say anything, just quote. Quote what the others have to say. Show the pictures. Take 30 seconds on CNN, 20 seconds on BBC. We are not there anywhere. We are not using media at all, deluding ourselves by saying, yeah, we made that statement, we got it. Yeah, Pakistani media certainly did a very good job of covering us, but that's selling to the converted. We have to convert mindsets that are not only unaware or apathetic or distracted. They are looking at a country called Pakistan, which, I'm sorry to say, enjoys an extremely negative image. That's the hard, bitter truth. The truth is that this beautiful country, with so many facets to it, which the world is unaware of, enjoys a very bad image around the world. So, the first reflexive action is that Pakistan is promoting Kashmir. Is it worth listening to? Because after all, India is a democracy. India has this cultural vibrancy. And Pakistan is all about extremism, violence, terrorism, occasional relief from Malala Yousafzai or Sharmeen winning an Oscar, but that's relatively fragments. So, there's plenty to do. Positioning Pakistanis in academia, in Europe, in North America, where Indian Americans are, they've penetrated American academia, think tanks, media, the White House, State Department. I think behind Alice Wells's bizarre statement on CPEC 3 days ago, there has to be an Indian American hand behind it. I mean, feeding all that data, misleading data, and one knows how the Washington circuit works. Let me conclude by saying that even though the scale of the challenge is great, we have the capacity to do it. I mean, we are the most uniquely created nation state on the planet. One of my previous books lists reasons for it. It's a good opportunity to promote my book since none of you have read it. But it's now in its 3rd edition, so you might as well hopefully help it go into its 4th edition. Pakistan, Unique Origins, Unique Destiny. I've offered 8 reasons why we are the most uniquely created nation state in history, given only 6 months to survive. And even though we lost East Pakistan in 71, we are right here now, and we are not going anywhere else. We are staying. If we could overcome the circumstances and the challenges of our birth, we can overcome much more. We can overcome this challenge. But the question then finally remains, what happens to the nation state sitting next door? India as a nation state is a very valuable part of the international community. It's 1.4 billion people. It's going to overtake China soon, the world's largest. You can't ignore it. But it is a predator nation state. It has steadily expanded its territory from 1947. Will it continue to do so? We are living in a world where Russia can annex Crimea and continue. Merrily. You can sanction it. You can pass resolutions against it. Not a difference does it make to Russia. It swallowed Crimea. Can it swallow Kashmir? Because of the nature of the nation state, because it's just so big. And because the United Nations, where 5 veto powers can reject the views of 188 other member nation states. What hypocrisy. And out of those 5 veto-wielding powers, let us concede that our beloved China, a model of development, is a one-party state. Russia is de facto a one-party state. But there are three very vigorous democracies, France, the UK, the USA, who believe in democracy, except the United Nations Security Council. There's no democracy there. Will the nation state overcome this fundamental hypocrisy that marks the international order? Well, we can only work on it. We can build our capacity, build ourselves, remain steadfast, and that day shall come, inshallah. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree that this has been an enlightening speech, and Jawad Jabbar Sahab has covered a very broad canvas in a very limited time. I hope it has given sufficient hint to each one of you to further exploring the dimension of this issue. Without any break, we proceed to the plenary session of this seminar. We are delighted to have several Pakistani and foreign scholars and intellectuals with us. Mr. Jawad Jabbar Sahab is chairing the session. We shall shortly be having His Excellency Prime Minister Azad Government of Jammu and Kashmir, Raja Farooq Haider, as the chief guest of this session. The plenary session is divided loosely in two parts. During the first part, we shall generally be talking of global dynamics in which Kashmir issue is being discussed. We shall have a brief discussion at the end of the session, and we'll continue our quick questions. In the second part of this session, we shall be talking particularly of Kashmir issue and how the world has responded to it. The whole session will be concluded by our worthy chair, Jawad Jabbar Sahab, and the chief guest, Honorable Prime Minister, His Excellency of Azad Government of Jammu and Kashmir, will give his address. Given this heavy agenda, we expect that all panelists will give kindly due consideration to time. The first speaker of this session, now I would like to invite our speakers on stage. We have with us Air Commodore, retired Khalid Iqbal Sahab, Roger van Zwanenberg, Dr. Asma Shakir, Professor Dr Yashpal Amarchand Tandon, Executive President, Institute of Policy Studies Khalid Rahman Sahab, Syed Iftikhar Gilani, Dr Fazl Hadi Wazeen, Professor Dr Nazir Hussain, Professor Dr Akis Kalaitzidis. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, sir. Please join us on stage. All the speakers. I request Air Commodore, retired Khalid Iqbal Sahab, to please come on stage. Roger van Zwanenberg, Yashpal Amarchand Tandon, Dr. Fazl Hadi Wazeen, Professor Dr Nazir Hussain, Professor Dr Akis. The first speaker of this session is Air Commodore retired Khalid Iqbal. He is a security analyst and contributes regularly on national, regional and global security issues through various think tanks. He is senior advocate of IPS and a member of National Academic Council. He will enlighten us on how the global dynamics have recently changed in a way that extremist ideologies are increasingly taking center stage in global politics. His topic, for today is Rise of the Far-Right Political Thought and its Impact on Kashmir Issue. So,
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, it's always refreshing to come to Islamabad for such conferences. I join Mr. Javed Jabbar in saluting the bravery, courage, and preservation of the Kashmiri people for continuing with their struggle against very, very cruel circumstances. At the outset, I'd like to commend Institute of Policy Studies for organizing this timely international conference on evolving situation in Indian Occupied Kashmir. I shall, in my part, talk about the rise of far-right thought to political power at state level and its impact on Kashmir issue. Ladies and gentlemen, history records many waves of rise of ultra-right doctrines to political power at state and sub-state level. Most of those were by and large confined to a limited geographical patch and had appealed to a particular ideology or ethnicity. A rise of far-right thought to political power, which is now affecting the global environment, is an exception in that sense because it is encompassing most part of the world and it is encompassing various religions and various ethnic backgrounds. Just a few years ago, the very thought that the far right could rise to political power in then enduring democracies was poised to a shrug, not just by the liberals alone, but even more vehemently by the right-wingers themselves. To surprise everyone, just during 2010 and 2018, the extreme right has moved from outer periphery to the core of political power play the world over. Ladies and gentlemen, alarming aspect of ongoing wave is that its near global simultaneity and proprietary cutting across ethno-sectarian and economic divide, where both the exploiter and the exploited are claiming victimhood. Polarization patterns have moved from traditional and discernible horizontal and vertical lines to fascinating as well as frightening zigzag and hydra-headed contours. Most glaring implication is that states and societies are simultaneously turning increasingly polarized and space is shrinking for traditional bridge-making and safety valve mechanisms like diplomacy, migration, and asylum. Over the past 5 years or so, political parties associated with far-right dogmas have been able to gain substantial space in furthering their divisive objectives via electoral successes. This trend covers all parts of the world, including the so far liberal democracies of the West. Malpractices and illegitimate interventions in elections by far-right elements without any remorse is emerging as a new normal. Free and fair elections are becoming a fallacy. Moving from the margins, far-right philosophy is increasingly occupying space on center stage with vigorous claims to mainstream politics. Ladies and gentlemen, electoral gains by the far right started to become noticeable in 1990s through early 2000s. However, successes of current magnitude, at least throughout Europe, are a first since 1930s. Born out of crises thrown up by global recessions and conflict-triggered displacements, phenomena of populism, triggered nationalism and vice versa are now formidable political forces and are on the rise. Though media focus on right populist movements has mainly been on Brexit and the rise of the likes of President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the far-right doctrines, practices, and power accumulation efforts have strengthened across the world. Austrian Freedom Party's race to win the presidency was a close call. National Front of France is seen consolidating and augmenting its position. Netherlands Party for Freedom is also doing well. Golden Dawn has attained a strong format in Greece, and likewise, Alternative for Deutschland Party cannot be ignored in Germany. Interestingly, far-right cause and effect phenomena presents a vicious pattern whereby both cause and effect enforce each other. Some glaring manifestations of far-right political power are stampeding the international structures by eroding their mandate and imposing own interpretations on their way of functioning, running away from international treaties and obligations on the pretext that now these no longer serve the interest of a particular country, regime change attempts and sponsorship of ethno-sectarian separatist movements for disrupting governance in other countries, unilateral, preemptive and surgical strikes, embracing first use of nuclear weapons by even conventionally stronger adversaries, over-assertion of national-level self-righteousness, effort to recreate centuries-old political order, where presumably the prevalent strategic environment had ensured glory for a particular race or a religion, and defacing and even rewriting history to make believe such once upon a time fantasy, forced change of demographic composition through state incentives like enforced settlements, changing property ownership rights, taking away citizenship rights, and disenfranchising own people on the basis of color, creed, and origin of their ancestors. Non-state actors claiming propriety in the affairs which have traditionally been domain of a typical nation state, like warfare and administration of justice, etc. Well, the far-right landscape is quite comprehensive, and we can easily feel the presence of most of these manifestations invoke political order. We welcome the chief guest, ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Sir, I am talking about rise of far-right political thought to political power and its implication on Kashmir issues, and I will continue my text. Ladies and gentlemen, cumulative effect is degradation in the quality of statesmanship leading to majoritarian governments, hence already marginalized individuals, communities, and states are in for a long haul. Ironically, far-right constituency thinks it could do anything and get away with it, and that by doing so, it has nothing to lose. Domino effect is picking up. Followers of some religions like Buddhism, which is traditionally reputed for its pacific ambience, are also asserting their place in today's far-right mosaic. This rise has taken over the United States and Indian political landscape by storm, with express support by President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The University of Maryland's Global Terrorism Database has noted that right-wing inspired terrorist acts in the US have jumped from 6% to 35%. Ladies and gentlemen, now its impact on Kashmir conflict. Under this wholesale far-right environment, especially its byproducts like corporate greed and indecent haste for strategic domination, the August 5 annexation of Indian Occupied Kashmir by Narendra Modi government neither pricked the political conscience adequately in India nor amongst the Committee of Nations. Modi had done a lot of homework. The issue was part of his election manifesto. State government of occupied Kashmir had been sent packing, a partition and puppet governor was in place to rubber stamp any wish of the union government. Over the last 5 years, Supreme Court of India had been stuffed with RSS-aligned judges to look the other way. Force level in IOK, already having highest level of soldier to civilian level, was reinforced phenomenally. With curfew moving towards 150 days mark, there are no signs of any relief to helpless Kashmiris beyond symbolic utterances. Letting them exercise their political right of peaceful protest is not in sight. They are living in deplorable conditions where shortage of food, medicines, and denial to Medicare and closure of school is a new normal. Night raids, torture, indefinite detentions without trial, deportations to distant jails, and use of pellet gun is the evolving security culture in Indian occupied Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, all major human rights watchdogs have raised alarming reports with regard to stampede of human rights in Indian occupied Kashmir. However, all such reports have been brushed aside by India. Access to human rights entities to annexed territories is denied. There are voices from within India against the August 05 action. Congress has also opposed it, but hypocrisy stopped Congress well short of articulating its reversal as and when Congress returns to power. Despite 2 consecutive reports by the Office of United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and violation of UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir and violation of the provisions of Simla Accord, no organ of the United Nations has so far been able to pass any meaningful resolution. OHCHR had recommended constitution of Commission of Inquiry, which has not yet materialized. Ladies and gentlemen, now let's talk about the international media. International media covered the Kashmir conflict for a few days and then switched over to Hong Kong, where that conflict is very small as compared to the Kashmir tragedy. They are doing so because their bread and butter lies in the anti-China articulations as a part of strategy of America and its allies to contain China. Ladies and gentlemen, it will take some time to know whether Modi bluffed Trump or Trump bluffed Imran on the issue of US mediation of Kashmir. However, taking the things at face value, on November 21, Prime Minister Imran Khan has once again reminded President Trump about his commitments to resolve Kashmir dispute. One wonders whether Trump would be able to coax his brother at far right, Narendra Modi, who is now struggling to project return of normalcy in Indian occupied Kashmir. Illegal and unilateral steps taken by India in occupied Kashmir on 5th of August have brought the entire region into the brink of humanitarian catastrophe. Grave human rights violations are being perpetrated to muzzle the voice of Kashmiris and change demographic composition of the occupied state. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan is desirous of peace and stability in South Asia through the resolution of all outstanding issues, particularly the Jammu and Kashmir, through dialogue and in line with relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Sadly, Pakistani overtures towards peace have been repeatedly rebuffed, but also responded to by further escalation by these circumstances. The role of international community has never been so very important. However, international community has gone cold-footed. The indifference is bred by the overdose of ultra-right environment and the usual glow slow, always very evident in resolving the conflict the world over, where Muslims are likely to be the beneficiary of such settlements. At the United Nations, things are not moving beyond few sympathetic statements by the Secretary General. Shamefully, the current President of UN Security Council has refused to discuss Kashmir issue during her presidency on the plea that it was discussed too recently. Overall tenor of international effort to help helpless Kashmiris has not gone beyond lip service. It is indeed well short of gathering critical mass for any meaningful action. Ladies and gentlemen, global far-right predispositions may have slowed down the effect of campaign by Kashmiri people. However, it would be naive on the part of Narendra Modi to assume that India will be able to digest annexed Kashmir territories. Modi's claim to return to normalcy in Kashmir is a fallacy. Normalcy in Kashmir can only be judged after lifting of curfew and communication blockade, pulling out Indian occupation military and paramilitary forces, withdrawal of Kashmir-specific draconian laws. Indian government should take these steps and then see in which direction the things move. Ladies and gentlemen, this is third generation of Kashmiris campaigning for their right of self-determination. Urge of self-determination is in their blood. India cannot usurp this inspiration of Kashmiris. And in this struggle, Kashmir will always find their Pakistani brethren standing shoulder to shoulder with them. But the initial spark must originate from within the occupied territories. At the end, may I request you all, ladies and gentlemen, to join me in adding another voice to numerous earlier calls to conscience on international community and the relevant UN institutions to act decisively to fulfill their legal and moral obligations towards the people of Indian occupied / annexed Kashmir. I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. I just noticed that not due to any of us, especially me since I did not observe the time limit, I'm always innocent. The chair is always innocent. But we are only 50 minutes behind schedule. Only. So we would earnestly request every speaker to observe the time limit of 15 minutes. At 13 minutes, I will make a rude interjection and offer impolite reminder at 13 minutes. So, we now have the pleasure of giving justice to Thank you. Dr. Roger van Zwanenberg, please. We look forward to being enlightened by Dr. Roger global capitalism, far right, and the people. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege for me to be here, and I have to thank Khalid Rahman for inviting me from such a long distance. I've known Khalid now for 15 years, and I have a small organization which publishes Policy Perspectives Journal and makes it international. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here, and I'm going to try and keep within the 13 minutes which I've just been told to. 15 minutes. 15 minutes, thank you. Okay. Now this is extremely tough. I'm going to try and outline for you a global map of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is the context which is the overreaching part of Modi's economic policy. So for those of you who are not economists, don't worry. This is political economy and its history. And what I want to draw is, I want to try and get across to you the extent and depth of neoliberalism as a global policy. Now, neoliberalism, I'm going to try and read it to you because as I get older I can't remember my words, has taken many shapes and forms. In the 19th century it was called laissez-faire, and it's very little different from the neoliberalism practiced by the USA today. It essentially restricts government intervention in the economy. It holds that the economy is strongest when government protects individual rights, and it's left to the market to determine whatever happens in the economy. Now, there are three major components which make up laissez-faire or neoliberalism. The first is capitalism. The second is a free market economy. And the third is the theory behind it of market theory. Now, the theory of neoliberalism has been in the ascendancy since Adam Smith in 1776. And the essential part to understand is that it is the economic policy of the powerful. It is the system of distribution of wealth, of the extra wealth that comes out of capitalist society. All societies before the capitalist world did not produce increased wealth on an almost annual basis. And capitalism altered the dynamic of people's lives across the world. What I want to do is to break down the periods of these policies into three periods. The first is 1815 to 1914. The second is 1945 to 1971. And the third is from 1971-73 to the present. So we've got three long periods of history here. And I want to outline to you briefly what happened. First, 1815 to 1914. Britain in 1815 became the dominant world power. She had defeated all the other European powers which she had been in conflict with over colonization of the world. And in 1815, she took the predominant position and instituted laissez-faire. And that meant that capital was given relatively free rein to do what it wanted. And we need to understand the consequences in those 100 years, which I can very briefly outline. The first occurred in the Irish famine in 1843, and that lasted for 3 years. It was decided as a policy instrument that laissez-faire should prevail and that the Irish people should not be supported. Over those 3 years, the population declined from 8 million to 5 million. 1 million died and 2 million emigrated. And during that time, wheat was exported out of Ireland to Britain. So this was the first expression of how to run a neoliberal economy. The second element I want to bring up is in the Indian subcontinent and the famines in the late 19th century. Again, Britain, as the colonial power, did not intervene in these famines and allowed people to die in huge numbers. And this has been well documented now. And I won't go into further detail. And the last thing is the internal distribution of wealth went to the richest, which was the ruling classes and the people running industry. The working classes in the urban areas, they documented what had happened to them in the Boer War in the 1890s. They called up people to fight in the war, and they rejected 80% of the young men that came forward as being unfit. And that represented what had happened to the people in the urban areas, unable to fight a war. There was further evidence of the impoverishment of their own people. The problem that they faced over those 100 years is that they couldn't enforce these policies on the rest of the world. They didn't have the mechanisms. And I'm going to miss out the period from 1914 to 1945. This was a period of war and mayhem and chaos, and these theories hardly came into existence. But in 1945, although Britain as the dominant world power had been part of the winning side, they actually lost what they had fought for and had gained over 400 years. They lost their colonial empire and became a second-rate society. Between 1945 and 1971, America dominated the world, and they insisted that the British and the French make their old colonial economies available for investment by the American economies. And of course the peoples themselves had a major part to play in that scenario. And many independent countries felt they were free. They could form whatever government that they wanted. And I remember that time very well. I was in Africa and teaching in the universities at that time. And people really did believe they were free. In the Western world, because of the threat of communism, the distribution of resources changed. And it was a period when education was free, health became free, and people from the bottom sections of the society moved up the social strata. And that lasted until 1971. But the non-Western world was different. As they gained their independence, they looked to obtain the resources they needed to run their economy. And the Americans and the British had created the IMF and the World Bank. And these institutions operated policies which imposed neoliberalism on many, many of the smaller countries. And they still do so to this day. But there were still many countries which wished to be independent. And the Americans therefore created the CIA, which was a military secret organization which had to report only to the president. And the role of the CIA was to roll back any government that they thought would not follow their policies. They invaded and altered governments across the world. And this has continued to this day. In 1971-73, for lots of complex economic reasons, America went off the gold standard, and world trade was henceforward, they used the dollar and the dollar standard. So they maintained their dominance over the key world economy in terms of trade, and still use this today to punish countries which don't follow maxims which they themselves want to follow. So what you have is, in a sense, colonialism by other means. Everybody thought after 1945 that this was the end of the colonial period, and of course it was. But colonialism was dictatorship by foreign rulers, and that ended. But what was replaced by was a more complex system, by the United States in particular, but also by the European countries attempting to create neoliberal policies everywhere. And the countries which got away are China, Vietnam, Cuba, North Korea, and South Korea and Singapore. And it's these two latter countries which remained in the capitalist camp, but were able to mobilize resources in a very special way. And they managed to industrialize themselves and to catch up as a consequence. Catch up, I mean catch up with the West. And this is the context.
13 minutes.
I've got 2 minutes. Yes. This is the context in which Modi's India should be seen. Here we have a major territory in terms of population and economy, like Russia, which the imperial countries have been unable to control. They thought they had Russia by the neck in 1989, and for 10 years they tried to create a new neo-colonial state in Russia. And only through the takeover by Putin was that avoided. And as a consequence, Russia is the enemy of America and Western nations today. India, on the other hand, by taking a neoliberal policy, has become the friend of America. And it's in that context that we need to understand the Kashmiri crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Roger van Zwanenberg. That was a very, very fascinating journey into history. An extremely pertinent connection with contemporary reality. Thank you. And now we request Professor Yashpal Tandon to present his reviewed observations on Modi's India, a geopolitical and systemic question. Tom, you arrived only this morning, so I'm sure very commendable of you to remain committed to this schedule. Thank you very much.
First, I would like to thank the IPS for inviting me to this very important symposium. It's a very difficult subject, but mine is not about Kashmir. It is about India, but not again about India's domestic sphere, but Modi's India in the geopolitical context, global and regional. That's my subject. I'll take Kashmir as an example in my paper, but my paper is about what I just said. I want to thank Roger for having opened the door for me, because his perspective is what I share, and therefore I don't have to repeat what he has said already. Before I come to my paper, I just want to make one point clear. That is that United States and Europe are not democratic countries, have never been, and still are not. I live in UK, and I find that the working classes are exploited and oppressed by those who control capital. There is no democracy in the United Kingdom, no. Same in America. The Democrats and Republicans control the capital, and the working classes are not even allowed to create their trade unions. Oppressed nation in America. No. These Europe and America, imperial countries. No imperial country can be democratic by definition. So let's not go their way. Our democracy have been subverted by imperial domination. As Roger said, we're colonized. And I would say that we are still colonized. We are still neo-colonial, including India and Pakistan. The only countries that have escaped from that kind of domination by the imperial system are those who have had revolutions, like China and Cuba. Small Cuba, smaller than Pakistan, can point a finger at the United States and say, come, attack us if you will. No, they can't. No, they can't. China has also gone through revolution. So did Russia. So are some countries in Latin America, like now Venezuela and other countries in Latin America, who are fighting against the imperial giant on their north. They're still not democratic. They try to be democratic when America impinges their rule on them. As you know, what happened in Venezuela now, and make it impossible for them to have real democracy to express the will of the people. So let's be clear about our terms. Let's not hanky-panky to these imperialist countries. So, in my paper, I don't talk about Kashmir, but I draw lessons from Kashmir and the episode of Babri Masjid. Babri Masjid was taken over by Supreme Court order, and Kashmir was swallowed by India like a crocodile swallows a goat. What lessons do we draw from there? Might is right. Pakistan took the matter of Kashmir to the United Nations, but Modi knew nothing will happen. They'll pass resolutions, nothing will be done. Previously, somebody gave the example of Israel and Palestine. And the reason why Israel continues to dominate that region is because the Arabs are divided. Saudi Arabia against Yemen and all, they're divided. There was a hope some time ago when we thought that they might be having revolutions, just 2-3 years ago, Green Revolution, that collapsed. Egypt collapsed. Algeria may have some, anyway, collapsed. They are divided. And what's happening to our continent? We are divided in this region also. We are divided because both India and Pakistan have the same enemy. Guess who? Britain and America, Europe and America are the common enemy of India and Pakistan. Like in Palestine situation, with the Arabs are divided, we are divided. And these guys play upon division, because this has been the rule since colonial time, divide and rule. So that's what lesson we learn. Might is right, and these countries rule us through divide and rule. Now, if you look at the India situation of a global structure, India is a huge country, population-wise, financially, economically. UK, minuscule compared to India. And yet in the Security Council, UK can veto any resolution. India can't. So, UK is part of that conglomerate of imperial nations which exercises veto power. India is still a colony, can't do anything. Pakistan also can't do anything. Can pass resolutions in the General Assembly, not implemented. Hundreds of resolutions against Israel in Palestine, not hundreds, maybe tens of resolutions against Israel, vetoed by America. Resolutions on the General Assembly only. I think we have to understand the geopolitics of our era. And if you look at India from a global structure, it has no power. If you look at the financial system, global financial system, that's also dominated by the dollar, so far. Now, we see that Putin and Xi, countries who have gone through a revolutionary period, are trying to create an alternative financial system. So China, which has the biggest reserve, dollar reserve and gold reserves in the USA, is pulling out those reserves steadily, not quickly, because it will create problems for China also. But they are pulling out. Look at the figures. I've got the figures for that. What about India? Not pulling out. India, in fact, is increasing its dollar reserves. Lesson: India is in the American sphere of influence. India is still under the patronage of the United States. That's the lesson. India is a big country, but not independent. I have looked at the technology of India, and people admire India's technology. India has no technology. No. If you look at the, what is called the intellectual property rights and the rights of the people who invent things, India is nowhere in the list. US is first, Germany used to be second, Japan third. Now, US first, China is second, and pretty soon China will be the first country in technology development. India can't even produce, India produces pharmaceutical drugs which have lost their patents. But if they produce drugs with patented rights, the pharmaceutical company will take India to court. So, my friends, don't think of India as such a big power. It isn't really. Okay, let's look at, because I'm afraid of the chairman's dictatorial powers that is assumed. Okay. Okay, that's now. If you look at India from regional structure, you might have heard of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. In June 2019, they had a meeting in Bishkek, in Kyrgyzstan, and Modi and Imran Khan sat side by side. I don't think they wanted to. I wonder whether they talked about Kashmir. I doubt so. But in that context, India and Pakistan were equal, in a sense, because nobody really cared for India and Pakistan in that kind of structure, which was dominant, which was really run by mostly by bigger countries like China and Russia. Then you look at the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, founded in 2012, 7 years ago. This year, 2019, India has pulled out of it after 12 rounds, after 20 rounds, 25 rounds of negotiations. Why? Because India said, the terms are such that it will not benefit our farmers and industrialists. Guess what? The farmers and industrialists he's talking about are not the small farmers and small peasants, not the small, medium enterprises, no. He is talking about Birlas and Ambanis as farmers and industrialists. And these are the ones who want to close the door from import from outside in order that they can control the Indian market. But they won't be able to. They are also running out of power. Okay, I'll come to very quickly, I'll skip one or two more points, but let me now come to two very important points. One is that there is a possibility of an existential danger of nuclear war between India and Pakistan. Be very vigilant. In March 2019, there was an armed clash between India and Pakistan because of this suicide bombing that killed some Indian soldiers. Now, that kind of battles are going in the Middle East all the time, also in Africa too, by the way. But the problem now is, now even then, in that situation, in the question of weapons, India's conventional weapons is much better than Pakistan's. But when it comes to nuclear weapons, they're almost at par. I have got figures from the SIPRI, the Swedish organization. I won't go and give you figures, my paper has those figures. Now, that's one danger, that if Pakistan is pushed to the wall, it might be tempted, but probably not, to use nuclear weapons. And of course, it will be immediately spilled over the region. For example, India says that the China-Pakistan economic corridor illegally crosses Kashmir, so it could trigger a regional war. Let me move on to a more dangerous period we are living through, which people are ignoring generally. And I call it the slippery slope of global arms race that is created by monsters. Monsters. We have algorithm-operated killing machines, algorithmically, mathematically tuned. And they are delegated the power to target enemies as defined previously. So even if there is no human agency to direct that weapons, those weapons have acquired autonomous power to self to target. We are living through that period. For example, Turkey has a Kargu system, Kargu, Kargu system. It's a kamikaze drone system. And it can target anything based on purely facial identification. This is being targeting me, I think. Okay, so we are entering into a robotic arms race. Dangerous period. Now, as you know, Yemen was able to throw drones on Saudi Arabia. Little Yemen. And the drones went, so many of them, and demolished those oil tanks. So you see, you have a system which can really go out of control. And now, just a few remarks on the new vision forward. I'll go back to what I started before. I summarize this in 2 points. One is the national question. By national question, I simply mean the right and the ability of our countries to define their own domestic and foreign policy. That's the national question. The only countries that have resolved national question are the countries I mentioned before, Cuba, China, and a few other countries in Latin America. None of the countries, apart from the ones that I mentioned, have resolved the national question. Little North Korea is able to front its national question, and small Korea can get Trump jumping on his fingertips. Amazing. And that's because we have not understood the national question. We have not been able to acquire our institutional organized system of resolving our national unity among ourselves. We are divided by class, by religion, by caste, all kinds of things. Okay, that's national question. We are not resolved that. And second point I would make before the dictator slams on the board is that learning from lessons from Ethiopia. Ethiopia. This year, 2019, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed got the Nobel Peace Prize. You know that, huh? Now, Ethiopia and Eritrea have been fighting wars for a long time. It's not just India, Kashmir, India, Pakistan fighting for a long time. But the Prime Minister said, no war. We salute, we make peace. And he got Nobel Prize. We got to learn from Ethiopia that we have no quarrel amongst ourselves. Eritrea and Ethiopia were both colonized by the Europeans. They were fighting on divided territories all these years. They now have joined hands. We must learn from the experience. And finally, I would say that Gandhi said, and I'm a scholar of a Gandhi, I am a Gandhian myself. And I said, and what Gandhi said was, to wage war against war, we begin with children. That's where we start with. And I would add, with our women. Thank you very much.
So Assalamu alaikum, as you know, the topic of my presentation is Kashmir deciphering Hindutva mindset. So I would focus on that how what is Hindutva mindset and how it is affecting. Please, next slide. Next slide. Yes, so, and how it is affecting the India's Kashmir policy. So first of all, what is Hindutva? Hindutva is resurgence of Hindu nationalism, and it constitutes the politics of supremacy through maximization and manifestation of power. And then this manifestation is evident in both hard and soft security. Hard security is the coercive power, and soft is economic power, and soft is economic and other information warfare and other things. And then high and low politics. High politics is the politics, defense policy, and low politics is economic and foreign policy. So we can see the manifestation of Hindutva ideology, which I will explain later, in all spheres of Indian politics. So first of all, my presentation is divided in what and how section. So what is Hindutva is a connotation to explain the nature of Pakistan-India relationship, because as we know that the contemporary nature of this relationship is based on two-nation theory, and basically it is the concept of Hindutva which says that other are the lesser beings or untouchables. Hindutva symbolizes the white supremacy. It is the supremacy of white people, Brahman or Aryan, and it focuses on them, and for them they are superior to the other races as well. So it constructs a society which is exclusive in nature, and through religious, political and social polarization. And I would like to add that in order to maintain sustainable peace and a progressing society, societies need to be inclusive, and this is what democracy works for. So how this Hindutva thing is relevant to Kashmir? Because Kashmir is the only Muslim state of India, a state with the Muslim majority. And for last 72 years, without the will of those Muslim Kashmiris or Kashmiris in general, India, without asking for their will even, India is trying to maintain its occupation of Kashmir. So what they are doing and how they are treating the Muslim majority state, that is the manifestation that how they want to portray and present themselves for their Hindu vote bank. And then Kashmir symbolizes the Indian colonialism, Indian colonization of a Muslim majority state. So somehow states with vulnerable societies and fragile democracies, they feel proud, they have some wrong reason to take pride in, and colonization is one of them. Then, as I said earlier, in Kashmir, India manifests its ideology of Hindu supremacy. So this is again for the consumption of domestic vote bank. Hindutva believes that Indian history began with the invasion of Aryans. And who were Aryans? Aryan is the symbol of white supremacy again. So Hindutva encourages the politics of power centralization. And where this power centralized on the authority and empowerment of a Brahman. Then Hindutva also projects the idea of Akhand Bharat, means united subcontinent. And this idea is a big question mark on the sovereignty of the neighboring states of India, on the independence and on the existence of those neighboring states. And Hindutva also considers that any fight to unify a subcontinent is a sacred war, which is a religious compulsion of every Hindu to fight for it. And they also, a famous Hindu radical, Sadhvi, she stated that this war would be like Kurukshetra, which is a sacred war in Hindu mythology. So how Kashmir, then how it impacts on Kashmir? Kashmir is victim of, as I said, manifestation of Hindutva's coercive ideology, that if you cannot win the heart and minds of people or individual, you can use subjugating tactics to subjugate them, to inculcate fear of death and torture in them, and this is what exactly India is doing. And then again, it is a complex issue of religious nationalism. If we see the history of last 100 years of South Asia, Congress or Hindus, they always criticized Muslim identity or Muslim concept of Islamic nationalism. But if we see how India is behaving and evolving as an independent democratic state, they themselves are focusing on religious nationalism based on Hindutva. And this is how they are manifesting it in Kashmir as well. So then very briefly, Mandala theory by Chanakya Kautilya, which says your neighbor cannot be your friend. So Kashmir, if we see Muslim majority Kashmir state is neighbor of Hindu majority other regions, and it is in their perception or mindset that they can't be their friends. So it is a complex approach when we see how India is dealing with Kashmir, because we can see that India does a two-pronged strategy, one for the domestic consumption, the other one for the foreign consumption or for the international media. For example, I was reading that India tried to convince international community that they revoked Article 370 because they want to employ the Indian constitution, which is in favor of gender equality and equal rights for people from other school of thoughts, and which is not applicable on Kashmir. So that is why they revoked 370. And for the domestic vote bank, they demonstrated as a symbol of Hindu power that they have finally subjugated Kashmir or occupied it finally. But we can see that we can see that dichotomy. So then Hindutva has created by design, Hindutva is designed in that manner. They have created a perception of peace as a zero-sum game. So majority or the Hindu vote bank or BJP's vote bank or the radical Hindu vote bank, they don't believe that peace can be fruitful, peace can have dividends. For them, conflict and war and aggression has more dividends than peace. And this is how we say that we can achieve peace when it is cheaper than conflict. But right now, conflict is politically cheaper for the Indian religious clergy. So few highlights again for Hindutva. Hindutva has diluted or evaporates or make it less popular the political will and political capital for the peaceful coexistence with neighboring states. It has reduced the appetite for peace in India, and people and pro-peace voices, as we know, have been they have been deleted or they have been eliminated from the popular perception and vote bank. So then Hindutva based on competitive security calculus. So as my worthy colleague said, that arms race and all those things, so Hindutva advocates it that you need to be more stronger than your enemy. So they are always in this zero-sum game of arms race. And then Hindutva creates a perceptional paradox which lies in the thousands years old history of subcontinent, and that perceptional paradox is based that all threats to Indian unity and existence emerges from the north, and which is the Khyber Pass, because historically South Asia was invaded 70 times throughout the history from Khyber Pass. So this has created a perceptional paradox for the radical Hindu mindset that the threat emerges from the north, and that to Khyber Pass. This perceptional paradox leads to the dilemma of interpretation. Under this paradox, when Hindu radicals try to interpret the policies of Pakistan, and latest example is the opening of Kartarpur corridor, they perceive it as per their own psychology, fears, and what is in their head, not what exists in the structure and context. And then this interpretation leads to the dilemma of response, which is definitely irrational and not addressing the reality in that context. And this becomes very dangerous when South Asia is a nuclear region. Then they project, of course, the unification of subcontinent. If we see their national anthem, it claims Kashmir and Sindh and different areas of Pakistan and other neighboring states. So this manifestation of unification is a threat for the regional countries. And then the ironic part is when the political and military leadership, without calculating the consequences for regional and international peace, their postures are aggressive towards neighboring state, and this is what happened after Uri or Pulwama or this latest 370 revocation. So this is really important to understand. Hindutva is, I don't know if world realizes it or not, but Hindutva, any radical ideology can be dangerous and is dangerous for the international peace, and this becomes more important when South Asia cannot afford the political indecisiveness anymore. But we are in a politically indecisive position because of the radical ideology of Hindutva, which I read somewhere that Hindu Talibans. So Pakistan, unfortunately, Pakistan factor and Kashmir factor has political dividends in India's domestic politics, and that is why aggressive posture towards these two phenomena and trying to subjugate and trying to pretend to be stronger than them is beneficial for the domestic consumption for BJP. So overall, if we read, I don't have time to explain it in detail, but Hindutva is a parochial approach. Why? Because it is a narrow-mindedness which thinks that, I read somewhere that if your religion teaches you to think others are inferior and lesser than you need a new religion. So this Hindutva ideology is only based on the supremacy of whites. Consequences of Hindutva, and Hindutva itself multiplies the security anxieties of the USA, and this is again what is a foreign policy dividend for India, because India seeks its strategic significance by multiplying or exaggerating the security anxieties of the USA. So maybe USA also needs to work on their perception of self and others. Hindutva and Kashmir, how Hindutva is affecting Kashmir. It is an interesting and complex thing that India, famous Yashwant Sinha, Indian politician, BJP's politician, he said after analyzing the BJP's policies in Kashmir that India has lost people in Jammu and Kashmir emotionally. Then Dullat Singh said that BJP has created a mess in Kashmir. And Indian policies aims at altering the ethnic composition of Kashmir. It advocates anti-Islamic rhetoric, and then Islamophobia is being used as a strategic weapon to justify the Hindu hyper-nationalism, which sometimes I call hyper-fascist nationalism. So Hindutva is a political tool because, and BJP in future will use this tool more rigorously because the emerging gap between the realities and the election promises leads will push BJP to follow more aggressive posturing for Kashmir and Pakistan so that they can divert public attention from the actual issues and focus on the boogie of Pakistan and war hysteria. So very briefly, what is the cost of Hindutva for India? The cost, if they would realize, would be really high. Because as I said, conflict is cheaper than peace now because of the political dividends. Hyper-nationalism led the world towards the Second World War. So the world has to realize and understand that. Religious nationalism led to the creation of Pakistan and Hindustan. So before 72 years earlier, it was not fruitful for Hinduism, then how it can be in 2019. And then India internationally, and I can see in media as well, India is departing from the image of secular India, which they have to calculate that how it will be beneficial for them. India has lost Kashmir politically and emotionally. Doesn't matter, subjugation doesn't matter. People are not with them. Pro-Indian voices, even in Kashmir, pro-Indian voices are even reluctant to speak in favor of India because of their latest policies for Kashmir. Hindutva has built walls within the Indian society on the basis of caste, religion, ethnicity, and different social class. So democracy definitely fading away. Yesterday I was reading an article that how Modi is murdering the Indian democracy. So this is what is happening. So as we all know, economy is on decline. The famous Nobel Peace Prize winner, Bengali American, this year he won the Nobel Prize for economy, and he said that Indian economy is on the tailspin. The more Indian economy would move forward towards the decline, the more aggression we will see in the regional and international scenario. And the last point, the Hindutva poses a potent threat for regional and international peace, especially with the possibility of Indian nuclear program falling in the hands of Hindu radicals, is a nightmare for the international status quo. And I would like to mention that right now this status quo is in favor of the USA, because USA is the so-called superpower, and USA has to realize that after World War II, Great Britain was shrink to the United Kingdom. So Indian nuclear program in the hands of Hindu Taliban is a real threat. And then safety, and it is a big question mark on the safety, credibility of Indian nuclear program and their command and control. And at the end, I would like to say that the biggest victim of radicalization is rationality. So we cannot find rationality in the irrational behavior of Hindutva under BJP's or Modi's government. So we have to realize that and try to seek some rationality out of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum. Great privilege to be here because I see many practitioners and academics sitting in the hall who deal with Kashmir. I'm glad that there are the people also sitting in the audience who actually made the Kashmir policy. And today they are listening to the academics. I'm grateful to IPS for inviting me here. And most of the people who know me about Kashmir, I'm always very critical. I met Jabbar Sahab after a long time, so few of my minutes I devote to Iftikhar Gilani sir, because he has spoken out the heart of the Kashmiris. His last words are the true epitome of the feelings of the Kashmiris. We are still waiting when this volcano would burst out, but hope have been dying down, unfortunately. Secondly, my topic is very difficult, post-August 5 academic and policy discourse. If you all have been following the program, everywhere it is written Kashmir, India. In this very topic, nothing is written. I have to deal with Indian policy discourse and academic discourse, or Pakistani or foreigners. It's very difficult. But few things, and then I come to the 3 case studies. Since 1947 to August 5, 2019, there was no connect between academic and the policy making, especially in terms of Pakistan. The 3 distinguished writers in Pakistan who have been writing on Kashmir, one of them is sitting here, Dr. Shaheen Akhtar, Dr. Pervez Iqbal Chima, unfortunately he is no more in this world. A little bit of this has also been written by Professor Iftikhar Hussain. And I know very well, previously Institute of Regional Studies, when it was very vibrant, it used to publish Kashmir policy issues. And lately, the IPS, Institute of Policy Study, has taken this initiative of writing regularly on Kashmir issue. But unfortunately, believe me, I can give you many instances. There's no connect, nothing of the sort, between academic and policy making for the last 72 years. Now suddenly post-August 5 scenario, What academic discourse we can highlight? Nothing. It's just few months. And as you know, in few months, there have been many reports. You can term them as academic, you can term them non-academic, you can term them as policy making. One launched by Bilal Ahmed Sufi by his members about the legal aspect of August 5 invasion or action of Modi government. Second, by Sasi, they have revealed a report on the atrocities after August 5, 2019. The rest, I think there are journalistic reports, there are newspaper reports, but academically, nothing has come up. Yes, one thing glaringly which August 5 has revealed is, now there is much more focus on academic discourse. The policy discourse is following the academic discourse. I have just come back from Turkey to participate in international conference on Kashmir, where it was all academics. And first time ever I found that academic discourse were being given credence over the policy making. I don't want to reveal so many things which many of you already know, that currently the policy of the government of Pakistan, to be said, General Durrani sir, government of Pakistan's policies are in a flux. They are at standstill. And especially if we follow today's decision by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, there are very, very difficult positions coming in governance of the Pakistani different policies, whether it is Afghanistan, whether it is Taliban, whether it is Kashmir. So I think this role of the academia, the due role of the academia has only now been given to the Pakistani academia first time ever. And IPS has taken the lead of inviting most of the academics from Afghanistan, from abroad, from Pakistan. And this is the manifestation that without a sound academic discourse, you cannot launch a policy discourse. Now, two examples. United States of America, its foreign policy works on the recommendation and the cool-mindedness of the think tanks. In fact, it has been said that 90% of the American foreign policy is based on the opinion of the think tanks. Rand Corporation, Heritage, Carnegie, etc., etc. Many of us don't follow the Indian academia or Indian think tanks, but in India there is an institute called IDSA, many people who are well versed. It is so dedicated on different policy issues that you will be surprised. I don't want to go into critical detail, but one thing I would say, we have 3 institutes, government owned. Should I say something? Not a single PhD. And after every 3 years, the area is changed from one to other, from other to other. The AJ&K Prime Minister just last few months back, they launched a think tank in Kashmir. I don't want to discuss anything about that. He'll discuss himself. How vibrant it is, how well connected this is with the international organization and think tanks. It is up to him and the DG of that particular institute how well they can go. So this is a real problem with us, that we lack an academic discourse to be followed by the policy discourse. Idhar hota kuch ho raha hai. We launch the policy discourse and then all of our media, our journalist brothers, sisters and academics are followed to follow that. This has not been done. Because please, there are many army officers sitting here, and one of the army dictum is, if you want to war, prepare in peace. So today is a dynamic issue on policy making, academia making, practitioners of Pakistan. And let me further the one aspect which my brother from Indian Occupied Kashmir said. Modi and Trump are the only 2 leaders in the contemporary international relations who are working on their election agenda. And they are being criticized. हमारी फरजाना मिनिस्टर बहन भी बैठी हैं, इन्होंने पॉलिसी मेकिंग की हुई है. And you know very well, Modi had been saying this for the last 5 years, and you are sleeping. It can't happen, it can't be done. No, this is not done. The people who are dedicated on Kashmir, who are dedicated on researching the Kashmir issue, must be tossed with it. Today is the time, I think, and the IPS has taken the lead. So my emphasis remains that Pakistan must have an academic discourse on Kashmir. The traditional propagator of the Kashmir issue have been sidelined, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever. So we have to come forward with innovation. And I tell you, unfortunately, all the media is reporting, otherwise I would have told you what happened in Turkey. But in my conversation, closed door, I can reveal this. So you have to raise your genuine voice of the Kashmiris, the people who are well-versed with the Kashmir issue. Thank you very much.
Wow, very funny of that. Thank you so much. And very thought-provoking.
Yes, about 6 minutes from my position.
You come back in the discussion, Zarur. Dr. Akis Kalaitzidis from the United States, originally from Greece, writing us on Indian policies in Kashmir, local politics, global impact. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank Dr. Halil Toker for the invitation and the staff of IPS for their wonderful hosting of this event. And I would like today to talk about Kashmir local politics and global impact. And I aim to examine how local problems become global. In the case of Kashmir, this well-established case study should yield several important conclusions, both in the way of theory and in re-examining facts on the ground. First, I will examine the theoretical aspect of the relationship of the local to the global. Secondly, I will examine the local impact of the global. And finally, I will provide some suggestions for building a theoretical bridge between the two. It is a truism that most realist international relations scholars today view the state as a black box, mostly to be dealt with as a unit of analysis, but rarely to be analyzed in itself. A recent few of these scholars even bother to study the connections between the fine-grained local data and enrich issues of global importance. It wasn't until 1971 when Cohen and I noticed and advocated the transnational framework of analysis that goes beyond the state that many studies started looking at the local impact to the global. Suddenly, local transnational NGOs, activists, advocacy groups, multinationals, multilateral organizations, transnational organizations, and finally terrorist organizations became the focus of inquiry. Focusing on the actor activity, though it adds to the body of knowledge, it does not make the link between the global and the local explainable. This brings me to the impact of the local problems on global governance. Subnational power relations generally underpin global problems. Just as with the financial crisis of 2008, which was the result of several bad political moves towards regulation, power plays between Wall Street bankers, corruption and greed, the problem became a global behemoth, which rocked the EU and several countries around the world because it morphed into a national debt issue of global proportions. I therefore conclude that global governance cannot be understood unless fully analyzed at the subnational level, exposing and better understood the local power relationships that are part and parcel of global governance. Surely, Kashmiri power relationships are very important in the management of this conflict. It is very important, for example, to think that the Indians keep moving the goalposts, so to speak. They're making it harder and harder for Kashmir to gain autonomy and independence. I look at, secondly, the local impact of the global, which again is understudied, especially when it comes to the issue of Kashmir. First and foremost, when it comes to studying global discourses at the local level, very few studies exist which trace the impact upon the local populations. We have a need to understand the impact of this global nationalist turn that has turned local politics and cannot be highlighted without a multivariable study of the impact of Hindu nationalism on Kashmiri politics. Third, bringing a cross-disciplinary research on the local global spectrum by introducing elements of transnational networks that operate in order to be able to gauge the entire decision-making process. It is becoming abundantly obvious that transnational problems can no longer be viewed through the lenses of national sovereignty. A state-by-state analysis seems useless or unable to explain. And something like avian flu epidemic happens or Ebola happens in the Congo Basin. These cases they're above state sovereignty, and state sovereignty only serves as an additional impediment to managing the issues internationally, and such is the issue of Kashmir. That is why my colleague Nikos Zachariadis and I have suggested exploring the scalar effects of local politics in terms of reverberation across territories, but also in time and as a sequential process. It's a little complicated as an argument, but looking at the theory from Castells and Keke Singing and Lake and Wong, we conclude that the study of coalition formation, early movers have the advantage of creating positive spillover effects, while late movers suffer negative spillover effects. So contrary to mainstream theories, we conclude that network power and framing rather than coercion, timing rather than problem size, to be important mechanisms that link the local to the global levels. Networks as defined are a set of interconnected nodes differentiated by the quantity and quality of connections. We adopt networks as actors that in our scheme, and I will skip several of the definitions in fear of being carried out by the chairman physically out of the room. We theorize that networks follow the rule of preferential attachment, that is the tendency of new nodes to bind themselves to old ones and already well-connected nodes. Secondly, nodes have conflicting preferences, and therefore there's variation. Third, nodes are not all created equal. There are differences in size and power. And network power finally amplifies the diffusion of the message and political control, while network makers decide the content and the format of both processes, which are important to examining the cascading effects of local problems becoming global. As networks become important on the cascading of local disturbances into global problems, there is a process of political crystallization in which is important to the behavior of networks. Think of political crystallization as growing a small plant. To give you an example, in the original study that we did in the Arab Spring, the networks did not exist. They had to be created en masse and then have since fizzled away. So it is not a permanent process. It is a process of political crystallization of the networks that allows us to make inferences about the effectiveness of such networks on the agenda. The process of what we call political crystallization unfolds into 3 steps and has 2 tipping points. Step 1, some sort of primordial soup of preferences and alternative courses of action. There is no institutional focus or attention, since no preference dominates over the others. Various norms and interpretations compete against each other, and no one triumphs. Think of it as Kashmir past partition. You have possibilities of referendums, selective autonomy, outright revolt, all solutions and all solutions between. So many of those were not able to be materialized. During the second step of the process, a political crystallization, a seed arises. A seed is a small cluster of individuals who adhere to and give preference to a particular conception of human rights. In our view, it will also occur spontaneously and consciously in response to events in the real world. In our example, this would include a group of Kashmiri intellectuals or students, or even people flowing opinion influences in the region. Here's where we reach the first tipping point, which would be governmental pushback. For the network to survive, it would have to be big and withstand brutal repression from the government. Otherwise, it would fizzle away. If the seed survives, it begins to create new value for the network. The propensity to create greater cascading effects rises with the amount of benefits actors gain by participating in such networks. Meaning the more that you connect yourself to those revolting against the government, the more chances you have to do well. In the third period, the network begins to attract new adherents. Others who see the value of benefits the network provides its members are attracted to its norms and seek to gain same benefits. In this way, the original grouping of individuals becomes a central node and then begins to gain network-making power by circumscribing participation rates and normative beliefs. Human rights organizations in Kashmir are a good example of such networks. The opportunity of such organizations to promote human rights and create value from global media and international organizations and state governments will depend upon the value of those organizations place on the message they receive. In our original study of the Arab Spring, we conclude with the following two propositions. First, the ability of national actors and demonstrators during the Arab Spring to attract outside attention and support of their demands depends on their capacity to sustain a large enough network that contains a message which contains value to the members of the network. This, thus, is Kashmir. In order to influence the agenda, human rights organizations must be prioritized because they provide a message that international organizations and even state governments value highest besides their own security. Our second conclusion was in reference to behavioral change. The attraction of outside help beyond talk depends on the value of outsiders, the value that they place on joining the network, measured by the degree to which the message coincides with the outsider's short-term goals. Thus, in an Indian-controlled Kashmir, the plight is going to be dependent upon the perception of the recent incorporation of Jammu Kashmir into India, which for many states isn't at all the focus of their short-term politics. While the immediate impact of India's coercive action may not be felt internationally, human rights organizations on the ground have the ability to create networks to disrupt India's aggression. Sustaining and enlarging these networks in the face of India's opposition is the only way the local disturbances will quickly and clearly be transformed onto a global messaging boards attracting global attention. Essentially, Kashmir can become a global issue through human rights organizations, through their local activists and local activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Amma ba'd. Respected Chairman, Senator Javed Jawad Sahib, Janab Khalid Rahman Sahib, the wise and well-intentioned diplomat ex-ambassador of Pakistan to Afghanistan, Syed Iftikhar Hussain Sahib, Janab Turabi Sahib, Ghulam Muhammad Safi Sahib, Gilani Sahib, distinguished scholars, dear journalists, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I am grateful and thankful to Institute of Policy Studies Islamabad for inviting me in this prestigious seminar. Special thanks to Khalid Rahman Sahib and the whole team of the IPS. I am coming from Kabul, the heart of Afghanistan, to carry and convey the salams and greetings of Kabul, Kandahar, Herat, Balkh, and Ghazni to Islamabad, Lahore, Peshawar, Quetta, Multan, and also to convey the best wishes of great Afghan nation, the great nation of Pakistan. Afghanistan and Pakistan, they are two brotherly countries. And the people of Afghanistan always wishes a good brotherly relationship with the people of Pakistan. We will never forget the historical stand of great nation of Pakistan with the people of Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. Without your brave stand and sacrifices, it was not possible that we as Afghan nation achieve the freedom from the communist colonialism in Afghanistan. So thank you. Thanks to the Pakistani nation, the all Pakistani nation. The topic of my paper is Kashmir issue and developing regional scenario. And I will try to present a summarized summary of my paper. It is clear that since the partition of Indian subcontinent in 1974, the Kashmir issue has been a great source of regional instability and caused three wars between neighboring countries, Pakistan and India. The conflict has been one of the reasons for hostility and instability in the region. It has brought a lot of suffering to the people of Kashmir as well as to the people of Pakistan and India. Unfortunately, the international community, especially the United Nations, has been failed to take bold steps for resolving the issue according to the international law, United Nations Charter and Security Council resolutions. The ongoing dispute of Kashmir, if not resolved in a just and acceptable and durable way, and acceptable to the people of Kashmir and all parties of the conflict, will remain a big source of uncertainty and instability in the region, posing continuous threat to the peace and security in South Asia, even in Central Asia as well. The recent developments in Kashmir, I mean the 5th August 2019 decision of the Indian BJP government and the Indian BJP government unilaterally decision of ending the autonomous status of Indian controlled Kashmir and declaring it as part of India, which is contrary to the United Nations resolutions and some agreement, has pushed the situation towards further complications, further escalated the tension and increased the possibilities and danger of armed clashes and even war between the two nuclear powers in the region, which is India and Pakistan. Considering the current tense and complicated geopolitical situation in Kashmir, some possible regional scenarios and developments can be as follows. I don't know that the term scenario is fit for this or not, but I'm using it. One, escalation of waves of unrest in Kashmir. Because there is the people of Kashmir, Indian controlled Kashmir, they are resisting, demonstrating, and sometimes they may lead to violence. And because the people, they have the right to determine their future, they have the right of self-determination. And from here, as it has been a traditional policy of Afghanistan, I call for the peaceful solution of the Kashmir issue. Because the denial of the ground realities will never change anything. So therefore, it is on all parties to acknowledge and to accept and to realize the realities, and they should forward towards a peaceful and durable solution of this issue. Second, increase of tension between Pakistan and India in the diplomatic field, economic field, media, etc. So, as long as the Kashmir issue is not resolved, I think the bilateral relations between Pakistan and India will never normalize. So, therefore, there is a need, an urgent need for the peaceful solution of the Kashmir issue. Third, beginning of the new phase of arms race in the region. The Kashmir issue, especially the recent developments in Kashmir, it has increased the possibilities of arms race in the region. Every country in the region will try to get more and much sophisticated weapons. Even those countries, not Pakistan and India, and other countries, as long as Pakistan and India, they want to try to get more and sophisticated weapons, the other countries in the region as well, they will try also. So it will create a big problem in the whole region. The fourth scenario is the possibility of war between Pakistan and India. Keeping in mind the increasing hostility and tension between Pakistan and India, the possibility of war between the two countries cannot be ruled out. If Allah forbid, and if something happens, cannot be ruled out, then it will put the whole region, the peace and stability in the whole region, even in the world, in danger. Because these two countries are Pakistan and India, neutral powers. It's not, again, then if it can be out of the control, the tension, the clashes in the border. So this is the situation. And all five, rise of extremism, radicalism, and militancy in the region. It's also quite possible that it will be increased. And six, further escalation of rivalry and competition between regional powers, particularly Pakistan and India. And we in Afghanistan realized that the competition race between Pakistan and India, because of if there is competition between Pakistan and India, it will affect all the surrounding countries, especially in Afghanistan. We realize this. 7, increased wave of violation of human and civil rights. Some distinguished speakers pointed to this. I'm not going into details. 8, demographic changes in India controlled part of Kashmir. So this will, the recent decision of Indian government will change the demography and Indian controlled Kashmir, which will itself will create another problems. And 9th and last, the impact of Kashmir situation on the Middle East as well. What is going in occupied Palestine, or the creation of Israel, this is also related with what's happening here in the region. If some of the above mentioned scenarios come true, they will affect negatively the progress, development, and entire life of the people in this region. So therefore, there is a need, an urgent need that the problem, the issue of Kashmir should be resolved peacefully, in a just way, to bring the durable and sustainable peace in the whole region. And therefore, I think that the good relations between the countries of the region, especially between Afghanistan and Pakistan, it is must and necessary for the peace in the region. Now, from here, just in the end of my words, I will call the scholars, civil society, media, and all folk of the society that here in Pakistan as well in Afghanistan to play their role in bringing closer these two neighboring and brotherly countries. And we should not allow those elements here or there to achieve their goals by separating these nations into our countries. So therefore, we academicians, media, civil society, scholars, we have a role to play, because a sustainable, a good relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and it will help and assist peace building in the whole region. So therefore, I call from here that we should play our role. And I think in this, the media has a great role to play, because tension is not in the favor and benefit of any other countries. So therefore, I insist on this. And also I will say that a peaceful Afghanistan, a stable Afghanistan, is in the benefit of the Pakistan, of the whole region. So we have to play our role. In the end, I will quote Allama Muhammad Iqbal, that he saying about Afghanistan, about peace and stability in Afghanistan. He says that if Afghanistan is stable and peaceful, the whole region, the Asia, is peaceful and stable. And otherwise, if Afghanistan is not stable and peaceful, it will affect negatively the whole region. He says in the Persian, Asya yak paykare abu gilast, millati Afghan daran paykar dilast, as kushadi o kushadi Asya, as harabi o harabi Asya. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Wazeen, for your, as we say, loose your message of thanks and peace with the same note on which you ended. Now, pleasure of inviting Dr. Halil Toker, all the way from our brotherly country of Turkey, Professor Urdu. He writes regularly on Kashmir, Thank you. He will comment on the Kashmir issue, responses from Muslim states and society. Thank you.
मेहमानान इकराम क़दर मुअज़्ज़ज़ ख़वातीन व हज़रात अस्सलाम वालेकुम। अब ये ग़ज़ल ज़फ़र के मैं शेर से शुरू करूँगा। बात करनी मुझे मुश्किल कभी ऐसी तो ना थी, जैसी अब है तेरी महफ़िल कभी ऐसी तो ना थी। आज पहली मरतबा मैं पाकिस्तान में उर्दू के बजाय अंग्रेज़ी में बात करूँगा, क्योंकि हमारे गैर मुल्की मेहमानान करामी जो हम यहाँ तशरीफ़ आवर हैं उनको उर्दू नहीं आती है, इसलिए उनकी खातिर बादल नखास्ता मैं अंग्रेज़ी में तकरीर करूँगा, बल्कि पढ़ूँगा। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। From the 5th of August till today, Jammu and Kashmir is under merciless lockdown. As it is known by most of us, a planned and failed operation has been started by the far-right government of India, led by Narendra Modi, which aimed to win the game in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir to achieve long-lasting Hindutva goal. I mean, to eliminate all foreign elements, namely Muslims and Christians, from the holy Mata Bharat. And Jammu and Kashmir had been creating psychological disturbances for the extremist Hindutva followers, so to speak, BJP, RSS, Mahasabha, and Shiv Sena supporters. To them, how a Muslim majority state could remain in their sacred Hindu land. This operation was not only a combat operation and military mission of the Indian government in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but also a huge psychological warfare to cover up the crimes against the oppressed, undefended, and innocent people of Kashmir committed by the Indian occupation force in the valley. In the first step of sophisticated operation, the Indian government did everything that was possible to achieve its goal, and it used all means of psychological warfare to intimidate Kashmiri people and to down their resistance capability and their hopes for their self-determination, right, and for their freedom. Before revoking Article 370 and Article 35A, the Indian government issued warnings to Amarnath temple pilgrims and tourists came from out of Kashmir and removed all non-Kashmiris from the occupied valley. More horrible than that, India sent thousands of additional occupation forces to add, in which is already more than some 600,000 soldiers and paramilitary forces of India to Kashmir, in the most militarized area in the world. This was an open threat to all Kashmiris in Jammu and Kashmir, which has a clear message, saying that if we felt necessary, we would eliminate all of you without any mercy. And the way the Indian government owned it from the 5th of August till now proved us that it was not a blank threat, it was, and I regret to say, it is a cruel reality. In the glance of publicity, without any hesitation, and disregarding any single human right concern, India created a huge concentration camp for 8 million unarmed, unprotected, and defenseless people of the Kashmir Valley, regardless their age and gender, where the people had mostly said horrible to armed struggle against India forces for some last 10 years on. We all know clearly again, India activists led by National Federation of Indian Women issued a report saying that they found around 30,000 boys have been detained since the autonomous status of Jammu and Kashmir revoked on 5th of August. At least 300 girls were kept by Indian Army as molestation. In the mentioned report of the mentioned organization, we can see the horrific scans from the miserable life of humiliated and downhearted people of Kashmir as a result of horrific situation created by occupation forces of India. I would like to emphasize the word occupation here because very few countries in the world can commit this kind of human rights crimes against its own innocent citizens. This means India proves simultaneously that it is an occupation force in Jammu and Kashmir. As this report shows us, incredible human rights violations committed by Indian forces in occupied Jammu and Kashmir from the 5th of August till now, and cruel fact compelled even reasonable Indians to speak out openly. We know left-wing Indians took part in demonstrations in New Delhi in thousands. Sikh religion followers also expressed their solidarity with the oppressed Kashmiri people, not only in abroad but also in the different cities of India, especially in Punjab. But the interesting fact that we observe is the governments of Western countries went in a deep silence against all atrocities of Indians in Kashmir. And the phenomenal reality than that was except very few leaders of the Islamic world, I mean three or four non-Arab countries like Pakistan, Turkey, Iran, and Malaysia, who voiced their protest against India openly, the leaders of Arab countries embraced see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil policy. More interestingly than that, the Arab countries like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia conferred upon Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi with highest honors, and ironically, Palestine welcomed Modi as a great guest. However, I think there is no need to be demoralized and discouraged by the disheartening attitude of some Arab countries totally. Firstly, this is a very well designed and cleverly prepared move of Narendra Modi, a great gamer of misleading and puzzling propaganda game, to revoke the Article 3370 and 35A of the Indian Constitution on 5th August, just before his visit to Arab countries. Without any hesitation, all of us are aware well of the fact that all official visits, especially the visits of prime ministers and presidents, are decided, arranged, and planned months before the expected visit. With this artfully planned move, Indian Prime Minister created a negative impression and literally entrapped most of Muslims of the world that Arab countries supported his merciless policy in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Even though no Arab country to which Narendra Modi performed his visits announced that they were deceived, but their silence and recognition of the decision taken by Organization of Islamic Cooperation demonstrates that they backed up the policy of Narendra Modi occupied Jammu and Kashmir, perhaps partly, but never totally, as the Prime Minister of India wanted to demonstrate to Kashmiris and to Pakistan. Let's assume for a minute that Arab countries, so say Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Palestine are with India's brutal and atrocious policy as Narendra Modi wants to propagate. I request from all oppressed Kashmiri sisters and brothers and from all supporters of the Kashmiri cause in the world that we should not be disheartened by that manner. Because Islamic war is not consisting of only Arab countries, most particularly Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. If we think so, we cannot reach to any way out. There are many Muslim countries in the world like Turkey, Pakistan, Malaysia, Iran, Indonesia, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, etc. And their leaders definitely demonstrate their reaction against cruel Indian policies in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. For example, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on 9th of September, during his speech in the United Nations General Assembly, called for dialogue for the solution on Kashmir. In his address at United Nations General Assembly session in New York, Erdogan criticized international community for failing to pay attention to Kashmir conflict, which awaits solution for 72 years. And more openly, Mahathir Mohamad of Malaysia, in his address to the United Nations, said, now, despite the United Nations resolution and on Jammu and Kashmir, the country has been invaded and occupied. The entire statement proves us the fact that Kashmiris are not alone in the Islamic world. However, our mistake is we lay eyes on only the policies of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Even though the whole world observes the big shift in the policies of the both Arab countries in the new era, they entered, as we see in Yemen, Palestine, and Syria. We should not criticize them, since these whole policies depends on their own decisions and the new allies they choose. Their government can do anything for the interest of their countries. Wrong or right, this is their choice. We should criticize ourselves because of the misimpression that we have. Both Arab countries can be Muslim majority countries. Surely they are. But their new rulers have their own policies. No doubt that both are rich countries, but they prefer to spend their petrodollars in new fields. Their decisions, their policies, and their money, whatever they have, belongs to them. And there should not be any condemnation to them, at least by us, because this might demoralize us. If we depend or struggle on their policies and their money, and if we disheartened by their reactions that not possible to be compatible with ours, so we lose this struggle in the very beginning. And as far as I can see, this is happening nowadays in Pakistan and between Kashmiris all over the world. This is what the Indian government and Narendra Modi, the big gamer of the propaganda war and psychological warfare, wanted. What we have to do as NGOs, think tanks, or a single ordinary person is not to leave this humanitarian issue not only on mentioned Arab governments, but also on our very own governments, because all governments on the world think to protect their own citizens first and look at the abroad secondly. We know the government of Pakistan and foreign ministry, the government and foreign ministry of Turkey and Malaysia and Iran use all possible diplomatic ways and methods to create solution to the problem. However, they have a lot of restrictions and obstacles in the political and diplomatic order of the world that are not possible to understand by us.
Professor Toker,
Yeah.
अब आप उर्दू में फरमाएं. We will teach our overseas guests Urdu in the next 2 minutes. Just listening to you will be an education.
वो अब अंग्रेजी में मुकम्मल कर लो. उर्दू में बाकी लोग नहीं समझ.
अरे कोई बात नहीं, वो खुद समझ जाएंगे. आपकी बात इतनी माशाल्लाह खालिस और
अब बड़ी
जी.
अब असल में ये बात करके फिर उर्दू में जारी रखता हूँ. As you see, I am talking about public diplomacy that's reinforcing to official diplomacy, as Janab Javed Jabbar Sahab explained in a very entirely perfect way. अब हम सबको मालूम है कि सूरत-हाल क्या है और इसको चेंज करना सिर्फ हमारी हुकूमतों के लिए ज़िम्मेदारी नहीं है, हमारी भी ज़िम्मेदारी है. क्योंकि जिस तरह मैंने जिक्र किया, अर्ज़ किया है कि वो हुकूमतें कुछ कर सकते, कुछ नहीं कर सकते, कुछ कह सकते हैं अगर चाहें या ना चाहें, तो उनके दिल में हो भी. हम ये हमारी तरह नहीं है. हम जिस तरह मैं करता हूँ, ऑक्युपाइड कहता हूँ, इंडियन गवर्नमेंट वो क्या कहता हूँ, वो कब्ज़ा किया कहता हूँ और जुल्म कर रहा कहता हूँ, मैं कह सकता हूँ क्योंकि मैं एक बंदा हूँ और जो मैं अर्ज़ कर रहा होता हूँ ये मेरी ज़िम्मेदारी होती है और इसका ताल्लुक़ मुझसे होता है. लेकिन हमारी हुकूमतें ये नहीं कर सकती है, क्योंकि जब वो कंडमनेशन हो जो भी हो, जब कहते हैं उससे अगर नुकसान भी होना है हम लोगों को, यानी उनकी जो क्या कहूँ हमारी तरह वो लोग होते उन पर होता है, इसलिए उनको ज़्यादा ध्यान से आगे जाना होता है. मेरा कहना ये था कि अब अगर हम जो मिसप्रोपेगेंडा कहूँ, जो मनफी प्रोपेगेंडा कहूँ, उसके सामने देश शिकस्त हो जाएंगे, मायूस हो जाएंगे, तो शुरू ही में हम ये जो जंग कहूँ, ये भी एक तरह से जंग है, उसको हार जाएंगे, शिकस्त होता हो जाएंगे. अब मैं कहता हूँ कि हम मुसलमान हैं और हम सबको पता है कि हम नाउम्मीद नहीं हो सकते. ये नामुमकिन है हमारे लिए. अगर है तो हम आप खुद पर शुबह करना है कि हम मुसलमान हैं कि नहीं है. इसलिए अब हम सबको चाहिए कि नाउम्मीद हुए बगैर जो भी कर सकते हैं, अगर चाहें ये मैं कहता हूँ आम ख़वातीन भी इस बात को अपने हमसायों को समझा दें. तुर्की में भी ये कह रहा हूँ, क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोगों को तुर्की में पता नहीं है कि कश्मीर में क्या हो रहा है. क्योंकि कश्मीर में जो हो रहा है, इंडियन जो हुकूमत है इससे पहले भी तुर्की में मुसलसल प्रोपेगेंडा कर रहे हैं सालों से, और बहुत से लोगों को पता नहीं है कि कश्मीर में सूरत-ए-हाल क्या है। और मैं कहता हूँ, अपने बेगम से भी कहता हूँ, दूसरों से भी कहता हूँ, ख़वातीन जाकर अपनी सहेलियों के पास या अपने वो महफिलों में ये बात को आगे बढ़ा दें, क्योंकि अगर जो मैं कहूँ कौम कहूँ, वो जो मुल्क के जो मुल्क की जो लोग हैं, अगर वो बाशऊर होकर काम करने लगेंगे, उनकी हुकूमतें भी कुछ ना कुछ करने पर मजबूर हो जाएंगी। इसलिए मेरे आपसे गुजारिश है कि कभी भी बिलखुसूस कश्मीरी बहन भाइयों से, क्योंकि वो बहुत दिल शिकस्त है, उनको हक पर जाने पे उन पर बहुत जुल्म हो रहा है, कि यानी ये जुल्म है ना हिटलर के ज़माने में शायद ना हुआ हो, जो अभी कश्मीर मकबूजा कश्मीर में हो रहा है। दिल शिकस्त होने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। अब हमारे तारीख़ देखिए, हमारी जंग आज़ादी देखिए, हमारे मुल्क पर 4-5 इत्तेहादिया कौमें, जो इसमें इंग्लैंड भी है, इटली भी है, यूनान भी है, हमारी ईरानी दोस्त भी इधर है। लेकिन उस ज़माने की बात है कि कब्ज़ा क्या था और हमारे पास ना असलहा था ना कुछ था, लेकिन हमने ये भी किया है, हमने जंग लड़ी है, आज़ादी की, जो भी हमारे हाथ में था, और कुर्बानियाँ दी है। आखिरकार हमें अपना मुल्क मजबूम जो हम जिसमें जी रहे हैं, ज़िंदगी बसर कर रहे हैं, हमें मिला है। मैं कहता हूँ, ये जिस तरह कुरान मजीद में है, ला तक़नतू मिन रहमतिल्लाह, अल्लाह की रहमत से उम्मीद नहीं करना चाहिए। बहुत शुक्रिया।
Friends, I mean, fitting tribute to the importance of the subject. The preceding 2 hours, you had the benefit of 7 perspectives, geopolitically, geographically representing virtually most parts of the planet. If you notice, we've had perspectives from Pakistan itself, from North America, from Europe. We even had an Afro-European perspective from Professor Tandon, who had to leave only because he was exhausted. He had a writing problem. You had a South Asian perspective. You had a West Asian perspective. And perhaps very, very movingly, you had a perspective from Indian Occupied Kashmir itself. So truly, I think IPS has planned this and visualized this session most ably, and in an act of supreme self-sacrifice, the chair will not inflict his views on you, for which I hope IPS will give me a special token or medal at some point. And I will go straight to, also I will eliminate any of your fundamental rights to speak, because I love eliminating rights. And we will go immediately to the very special pleasure of inviting His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Raja Farooq Haider, who comes from a very distinguished family himself and has been looking after, leading the administration for the past 3.5 years after having served in several senior capacities. So, Prime Minister Sahab, we look forward to your
Dear Javed Jawad Sahab, Khalid Rahman Sahab, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, I still remember Javed Sahab in, I think, Institute of Strategic Studies, we were together. And the participants from India and Pakistan were staring at each other. I asked him to क्या कहेंगे उसको, इसका तर्जुमा कर दीजिए इस शेर का जो मैंने उनसे पढ़ा कि अजीज, दोनों के लिए मैंने कहा कि अजीज इतना ही रखो कि जी संभल जाए, अब इस कदर भी ना चाहो कि दम निकल जाए. If you remember that. Well, it's always been difficult for me to express my views in English because I want to speak from my heart, and it becomes difficult for me to speak in English. But because there are some foreign speakers also here, and I will speak in English and a few words in Urdu at the last. It is a pleasure to have spent some time in the company of distinguished scholars, enlightened audience, and listening to perspectives on a topic that merits attention of every thinking mind. Let me begin by congratulating the Institute of Policy Studies, the Policy Research Forum, and MSF for arranging an insightful and thought-provoking seminar. I also thank you for inviting me and providing me an opportunity to share my views. While thinking of those to whom we feel grateful, the foremost have always been the people of Pakistan and the state of Pakistan. In Azad territory of Jammu and Kashmir, we have never failed to acknowledge the support of Pakistan across the line of control. For decades, Jammu and Kashmir has been a UN-recognized disputed region. Neither its international character has changed, nor the people of Kashmir have accepted the status quo as their fate. Indian move of 5th August has exposed the Hindu nationalists' contempt for international law and UN as well as the dictatorial tendencies of Modi government. As many as 116 days have passed since India laid siege on occupied Kashmir, imposed curfew, violated UN resolutions and all the international and national agreements. During this period, the Indian Army has arrested thousands of citizens, including Kashmiri leaders, under the grab of so-called house searches. Most inhuman treatment, it is meted out by the youth of Kashmir. According to a recent fact-finding report published in September 2019, led by the National Federation of Indian Women, young boys, some as 14, have been imprisoned for up to 45 days, and around 13,000 boys have been detained since August 5. Another report, Kashmir Cage, a fact-finding report, highlights ordeals of Kashmiri women and young girls being molested and raped by the occupation forces in the region. The systematic genocide of Kashmiris did not start from abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. These violations have a history since 1947. They have only taken a more furious and visible shape now. Kashmir's spirit was never defeated, and I will tell you it cannot be defeated. By God, I want to tell you, either we will perish as a Kashmiri nation, we will drive India out of Kashmir. This is our belief. Due to legal, political and moral impunity extended to the occupation forces, not a single prosecution has taken place in any case of human rights violation in IOK. Brutal torture, rape, mass killing, forced disappearances, pellet guns, human shield are used as matter of policy by the Indian state in IOJK in a systematic and institutional manner, as all institutions of state, be it legislature, executive, judiciary, and armed forces from apart, Genocide Watch, a global organization to protect, prevent, stop and punish genocide and other forms of mass murder, has issued a genocide alert on IOK and called upon the United Nations and its members of imminent genocide in Kashmir. According to the Kashmir Chamber of Commerce and Industry, economic losses ran up to 100 billion rupees. It's about 1.40 US billion by September. Indian government under the leadership of RSS member board is promoting and implementing fascist Hindutva ideology, and its ethno-nationalist agenda extends to all its neighbors, including Pakistan. I have a small clip from Al Jazeera. A teacher in an Indian school is telling the students that Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, even Afghanistan are Akhand Bharat. That's the now it is happening in India. India's action of August 5, under which the state was bifurcated into union territories, paved the way for the transformation of demography, which is not only a violation of international law and UN resolutions. There is nothing in 370 for the people of Kashmir, but the real is 35A. What we are talking about present Kashmir, after 10 years, what Modi is going to do with Kashmir, it will be not that same Kashmir which we see today. The people in Pakistan should keep this in mind. International law and UN resolution, but under Geneva Convention, it is a war crime. UN Security Council needs to give up its criminal silence and stop India from ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri people. It should enhance pressure in India to avert the looming dangers of catastrophic war due to Indian actions, and set up an international commission of inquiry to examine the worst human rights situation in the held territory. If the international community fails to resolve the Kashmir issue through peaceful political means in accordance with the aspirations of the Kashmiri people, through immediate and fair plebiscite, the Kashmiri people would once again be compelled to pick up gun, which may prove disastrous for the region, particularly India itself. In spite of apathy of the international community and the United Nations, the Kashmir issue remains a reality and it is not possible to shut eyes from it. The clouds of war have becoming darker and thicker in the region. The war crimes by the occupation soldiers are not limited to IOK but have also frequently targeted, killed and disabled civilians in AJ&K along ceasefire line. This has become a daily affair by the Indian troops on the line of control. India has destroyed their houses, infrastructure, and the life has become very difficult on LFC. All economic activities have been stopped. India has used cluster ammunition to ensure maximum civilian casualties across line of control. This is the order of the day of the Indian artillery of using cluster ammunition. International law and order that we invoke so firmly and frequently is useless. It has become useless. If it cannot save Kashmiris who are killed, raped, arrested and tortured, houses and markets have been burned. The world talks of rights of birds and animals, but it doesn't see humanity in Kashmir. We ask the world community, including UN, to enable us to decide our own destiny through fair and free publicity. At worst, August 5, 2019 will be remembered by future generations as just another chapter in Kashmir, a long history of imperial oppression. At best, this latest attack on the dignity of a long-suffering people will mark the beginning of an era of unprecedented resistance and struggle towards freedom for the Kashmiris. Do not tell the Kashmiri people that they are the orphans of global family, who do not have the right to defend themselves. Do they have the right to self-defense, right to freedom, right to life? The answer is left for you. And lastly but not leastly, Javed Sahab, now I will say something in Urdu. जब तक आप कश्मीरियों को अपना केस पेश करने का इंटरनेशनल फोरम पे मौका नहीं देंगे, आपको कुछ भी नहीं मिलेगा. You will get nothing. It is not a territorial dispute between India and Pakistan. It is an issue of right of self-determination for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. जब आप इसको करते हैं, वो देखिए ना, बात यह आपको दुनिया के अंदर हकीकतों को जो है वो मानना पड़ेगा. इंडिया की इकॉनमी, उसका साइज, फिर वो उनका नजरियाती हलीफ है अमेरिका का, हमारा नहीं है अमेरिका. और मैं समझता हूं कि मोदी ने इतना स्मार्टली प्ले किया. किसी वक्त पता क्या बात है, हमारे एक मिसाल है, एक पहाड़ी लैंग्वेज में एक आदमी था, उसके घर उसकी बीवी ने कुत्ता पकाया हुआ था उसके लिए. बेटे ने कहा कि अगर मैं सच बोलूंगा तो मां मारी जाएगी, बाप मेरा मारेगा. अगर सच नहीं बताता हूं तो बाप कुत्ते का गोश्त खाएगा. मेरा भी यही प्रॉब्लम है. मैं क्या बोलूं आपको? वो चांद पर जा रहा, आप 92 के वर्ल्ड कप में फंसे हुए. तो क्या मतलब है, क्या कर रहे हैं ये कौम? किसी वक्त मैं कहता हूं, मैं किसके आगे मतलब है, वो शेर है ना कि क्या पूछते हो हाल मेरे कारोबार का, आईने बेचता हूं मैं अंधों के शहर में. मैं अभी उनसे कह रहा था, रहमान साहब से, किसी वक्त मुझे महसूस होता है वी हैव लॉस्ट कश्मीर. आपके पर्सपेक्टिव से अपना नहीं, अपना लड़ेंगे इंशाल्लाह. मैं अपनी स्नाइपर राइफल को रोज देखता रहता हूँ, बखुदा आपसे कहता रहता हूँ. मुझे हक पहुँचता है यूएन के रेजोल्यूशन में, मुझे तराबी साहब को, सफ़ी साहब को मैं हक पहुँचता है, किसी ने मैं नहीं रोका. لیکن یہ ہے کہ اس میں آپ سے گزارش کرنا چاہتا ہوں، یہ یہاں دانشوروں کا اجتماع ہے، آپ بتا کس کو رہے ہیں؟ کس کو بتا رہے ہیں؟ کون استفادہ کرے گا ادھر سے اس مجلس سے؟ اس سے میں ادھر فارن آفس میں تھا، میں نام نہیں لینا چاہتا ہوں صاحب کا، کیا کروں، وہی پھر بات آ جاتی ہے۔ انہوں نے کہا کہ بریکنگ نیوز، ہم نے کہا فرینڈ نے کہا اللہ کچھ ہو گیا، ہم نے پوچھا کہ انہوں نے کہا 27 کو اتوار ہے، اس کے مظاہرے اچھے ہوں گے، بس کیا مطلب ہے آدمی کیا بولیں، میں آپ کو کیا بولوں میں مطلب ہے ہم پر اعتبار کرے نا، پر یقین کرے کشمیریوں پر، ہمیں آگے رکھیں، ہمیں مشورے دیں۔ آپ نے کیا کرنا ہے، جب تک آپ آزاد کی حکومت کا رول متعین نہیں کریں گے آپ کو کچھ بھی نہیں ملے گا، یو ول گیٹ نتھنگ۔ اس لیے کہ جب اس کو انڈیا کے ساتھ کویٹ کرتے پاکستان کو 1 ارب و 30 کروڑ کی آبادی ہے، یہ ویسے ہی ٹی وی پر خوش ہوتے ہیں کہ انڈیا کا گروتھ ریٹ ڈاؤن ہو رہا ہے، وہ آپ نے بھی دیکھا ہے تم نے کبھی؟ کیا فضول باتیں کرتے رہتے ہیں، پتہ نہیں کون دور کی کوڑی لے آتا ہے ادھر لوگوں کو خوش کرنے کے لیے افیون کھلاتا ہے۔ اور میں آپ سے کرنا چاہتا ہوں، پہلی بات یہ ہے، میں نے وزیر صاحب سے بھی گزارش کی تھی 3 اگست کو، میں نے کہا جناب باقی لوگ کدھر ہیں آپ کے، دائیں بائیں کہاں کھڑے ہیں، ہے کوئی نہیں، اس کو قومی یکجہتی کا مسئلہ ہے، باقی جو مرضی آپ کریں۔ اب ادھر پارلیمنٹ میں پتہ ہی نہیں ہے 35A کا تو 370 کیا، تو مجھے صدر صاحب کو سمجھانا پڑ گیا ان لوگوں کو جو وہ وقفہ ہوا وہ MNAs کو۔ میں نے پرسوں 3-4 دن پہلے وزیر خارجہ سے گزارش کی تھی، ہمارے ریسورسز کم ہیں ہندوستان کے مقابلے میں، ہم نے کوئی ساری دنیا میں کشمیر کا کیس نہیں لڑنا، 12-13 ممالک، P5 ہے، جاپان ہے، جرمنی ہے، سعودی عربیہ، اور ادھر اس لیے میں کہتا ہوں ان کو باز رکھنا ہے ہندوستان کی طرف زیادہ ٹریٹ ہونے سے، ترکی ہے، ایران کو آپ نے تھوڑا سا اس کو پرو ایکٹیو کرنا ہے، انڈونیشیا اور ملیشیا، یہ کچھ ملک ہیں جہاں آپ نے جو آ کر بات کی۔ پھر دوسری گزارش ہے، آپ حرکت جوڑتے ہیں جنیوا اور ادھر کیا نام ہے اس میں نیو یارک میں، بھائی پالیسیز بنے گی تو واشنگٹن میں بڑھ کے اس ملکوں کے دولت خلافے میں بھی کچھ کریں نا، جہاں نیشنل پارلیمنٹ بیٹھی ہے جہاں سے پالیسی بننی ہے۔ میں ابھی گیا ہوں ادھر یورپین یونین میں، جبار صاحب 8 گروپس میں تقسیم ہے یورپین یونین، اس پر ایک سے بات کروں کہا تو تم نے اس سے بات کیوں کی؟ تو انہوں نے ہمیں کہا کہ بھائی یہ ٹھیک ہے کریں گے، لیکن آپ کو ان ممالک میں بات کریں جہاں سے ہم پالیسی لے کر بات کرتے ہیں، جب تک آپ نیشنل پارلیمنٹس میں نہیں جائیں گے، ان کو آپ آبادہ حکومتوں کو نہیں کریں گے، تو آپ کو جنیوا میں کیا، تو ادھر کیا ملے گا آپ کو، کیا نام ہے نیو یارک، سیدھی سی بات ہے، ملکوں کی پالیسیاں اپنے ملکوں کے دار خلافے میں بنتی ہیں۔ جس طرح یہاں پر فرمایا گیا، میں 1997 میں امریکہ گیا، ادھر کارنیگی میں بھی گئے، 2-3 جگہ گئے، وہاں پتہ چلا کہ پالیسی بنتی کیسے ہے، تھنک ٹینک کیا کرتے ہیں، میڈیا کیا کرتا ہے، کانگریس کیا کرتی ہے، اپنا اسٹیٹ ڈپارٹمنٹ کیا کرتا ہے، پھر وائٹ ہاؤس کیا کرتا ہے، ہر چیز ایک طریقے سے چلتی ہے۔ ہمارے یہاں آئے کچھ نہیں، اور بالکل درست فرمایا انہوں نے کہ امریکہ کو جو کامیابی ہوتی ہے اس کو اپنے تھنک ٹینکس کی وجہ سے، ہمارے یہاں کوئی مسئلہ ہے نہیں، اگر کوئی بات بھی کرتا ہے جن کو کہنا ہے وہ کہتے ہیں ہم سب سے بڑے علامے ہیں، ہمیں سب سے زیادہ پتہ ہے، یہ کہوں گا۔ ایک تو یہ آخر میں گزارش آپ سے کرنا چاہتا ہوں، ایک آدھ گزارش آپ سے کر دوں کہ کشمیری کبھی ہندوستان سے آگے سے اپنی گردن نہیں جھکائیں گے۔ میں ایک کشمیری نوجوان تھا، سپٹمبر میں لندن تھا، اس کا والد بیمار ہے وہاں پر، اور وہ جاتا رہتا اپنے باپ کو دیکھنے کے لیے، وہ 5 اگست سے پہلے وہیں تھا، باپ نے اس کو زبردستی بھگا کر ادھر بھیجا، مارا جائے گا تم۔ اس سے میں نے فائنلی پوچھا کہ ہندوستان چاہتا کیا ہے، اس نے کہا وہ ہم سے ذلت کی زندگی گزارنے پر ہمیں مجبور کر رہا ہے، ذلت، جس کا حوالہ میرے عزیز افتخار گیلانی صاحب نے دیا۔ میں ان کی باتوں سے 100% اتفاق کرتا ہوں، یعنی جو ہندوستان کرنا چاہتا ہے وہاں پہ، وہ کہہ رہا ہے پاکستان نے تمہارے لیے کیا کیا، یہ وہ میسج بڑی تیزی سے وہاں پر پھیلا رہا ہے۔ کچھ باتیں یہاں پر کی نہیں جا سکتی، اوپن فورم ہوتے ہیں، کچھ باتیں آپ کو کرنی پڑیں گی، بکرے کی ماں کب تک خیر منائے گی؟ آپ بچ نہیں سکتے. اس کا ہدف ہی پاکستان ہے, اس کا مودی کا. کشمیر اس نے راستہ دیکھا, اس نے انٹرنیشنل بارڈر پہ یہ گڑبڑ نہیں کی, اس نے ایک متنازع علاقے میں آ کر یہ بات کی, اس نے اپنا راستہ تلاش کیا یہاں سے. وہ آئے گا وہ آپ کی طرف. اس لیے مودی اکیلا نہیں ہے, مودی کے پیچھے ایک تھنک ٹینک ہے RSS کا, کسی کا, جو چلا رہے ہیں اس کو. انہوں نے تو صرف 3 اشخاص کا ذکر کیا, اس کے پیچھے ایک پورا سلسلہ ہے. وہ سمجھتا ہے, آج ہندوستان کے جو وہ لوگ ہیں وہ سمجھتے ہیں کہ ہندوستان کا جغرافیہ چھوٹا ہے جو ہمارے عزائم میں آگے کے. وہ اس سے پھیلنا چاہتا ہے بات. اس کو روکے گا کون؟ صرف پاکستان. یہ اپنا اس کو یوں ہی روکے گا, اس کو نیپال روکے گا, اس کو سری لنکا روکے گا, یہی روکے گا اس کو اگر روکنا چاہنا. مجھے نہیں سمجھ آتی کہ پاکستان میں لوگوں کو آخری بات کہنا چاہتا ہوں, آپ کو ہو کیا گیا؟ آپ اپنے آپ کو اتنا کمتر کیوں سمجھتے ہیں؟ ڈرا ڈرا کے فیٹر سے مار دیا جی جبار صاحب لوگوں کو, انہوں نے نفسیاتی مریض بنا دیا انہوں نے. وہ کھڑے ہو اپنے پاؤں پر, کیا ہو گیا آپ کو؟ اور میرے لیے نہیں, اپنے لیے تو کھڑے ہو. چھوڑو مجھے دفاع کرو کشمیری, مرتا مرنا دے, گولی مارو اس کو. اپنے جو کھڑے ہو نا, اپنی آزادی کو تو تحفظ کریں آپ. کیا ہو گیا آپ لوگوں کو؟ میں آپ سب سے پوچھنا چاہتا ہوں, میرا کسی کوئی کشمیر کے والے سے پاکستان پر کوئی پالیٹکس نہیں ہے میری, کہ میں کسی ایک الگ سے ایسی جماعت سے تعلق رکھتا ہوں. اگر آج میاں صاحب ہوتے میں یہی بات کرتا ہوں. میرا اس پاکستانیت کے بارے میں, اس بارے میں کوئی میری پولیٹیکل ایفیلیشن کوئی معنی نہیں رکھتی. یہ وطن عزیز پاکستان ہمارے زیادہ حق ہے آپ پر. آپ جغرافی کے بنا پر پاکستانی, میں نظریات کی بنیاد پر. بات یہ ہے کہ کچھ تو اپنا بھی تو سوچ بچار کریں. لڑ رہے ہیں آپس میں جیسے بچے لڑتے ہیں. کیا معیار رہ گیا اب ہمارا؟ اس میں وہ کہنے لگے اپنے یہ چیئرمین کشمیر کی بڑی جی پارلیمنٹ کا اجلاس رکھیں گے ہم, نیشنل اسمبلی میں کشمیر. میں نے کہا حضرت پہلے اس بات کو یقینی بنانا کہ ممبران پورے ہوں گے. میں نے کہا مجھے یاد پڑتا ہے بینظیر صاحب اللہ مقصد کرے, انہوں نے بلایا اجلاس, تو ہم تھے وہ اپنا اس میں بیٹھے تھے, وہ جو اسپیکر گیلری میں, تو 20 آدمی رہ گئے تھے. تو مراج خالد صاحب نے کہا ان کو میں لے آؤں نیچے فیور ممبر. دلچسپی کوئی نہیں. وہ جس طرح وہ کبوتر دیکھ رہا ہے اسے نیچے کر کے, بلی اس کو نہیں دیکھ رہی, اس کو وہ دیکھ رہی ہے. تو یہ میری آپ سے گزارش تھی. تو میں اس کے لیے کوشش کرنا چاہتا ہوں کہ جو یہ گفتگو ہوئی ہے یہ ان جگہوں پر جانی چاہیے جو اس ملک کے پالیسی صاحب ہیں, ان کو سمجھانا چاہیے, بٹھانا چاہیے کہ تم اکیلے کل نہیں ہو بھائی, اور بھی لوگ ہیں اس ملک کے اندر جو سوچ بچار کرتے ہیں, صرف آپ نے ٹھیکہ نہیں اٹھایا ہوا. تو یہ میری آپ سے گزارش تھی. میں یہی بات آپ سے کہنا چاہتا تھا کہ کشمیری انشاءاللہ تعالیٰ اپنی جگہ پر قائم ہے. کدھر جائے گا کہ ہم نے ہمارے پاس گوانے کے لیے کچھ رائے نہیں ہے. جان کی قربانی دی, مال کی دی, اسفتوں کی دی, اور کیا دیں ہیں, اور کیا چیز ہے ہمارے پاس گوانے کی؟ یعنی وہ جو اپنی انجمن کے دالوں بھر دیے ہم نے. وہ مجھے اس کشمیری کی بات یاد آتی, وہ کہتا ہے لوگوں سے کہہ رہا, اس کی بہن بھی کھڑی ہے صاحب, بوڑھا آدمی ہے, وہ کہتا ہے جس کشمیر کو خون سے سینچا وہ کشمیر ہمارا 2 دفعہ کرتا. پھر کہتا ہے میرا ہے, میرے 2 بیٹے دیے ہیں, اگر تیسرا ہوتا اس کو بھی دیتا. کہنے کو تو میں نے یہ 10 سیکنڈ میں بات کر دی, جس کے گئے اس کو پتا ہے. یہ پوچھے نا صفی صاحب سے وہاں پر آئے, افتخار صاحب سے پوچھے نا وہاں سے آئے. میں بھی ڈیوائڈڈ فیملی کا آدمی, میری ماں ادھر کی رہنے والی ہے, میرے باپ کا رشتہ آپ کی لائن آف کنٹرول سے اس طرف ہے. وہ بیٹھے ہیں اپنے عارف کمال صاحب, ان کے بارے میں کہا, کسی نے کہا اس کا گلا گھونٹ دو, یہ رو رہا ہے, یہ 1 سال کا تھا. وہ ہندو پروبھائی دیکھ لیں گے اس کو, کہا اس کا گلا گھونٹو. مطلب یہ کوئی ایسے تو نہیں ہے یہ کشمیر کے اندر ہوا. خود آپ کو نہیں پتا کہ مشرقی پنجاب میں کیا ہوا تھا, 55,000 مسلمان عورتیں ہوا ہو گئی تھی. تو آپ کو احساس ہے اس بات کا یہ پاکستان کیسے بنا تھا؟ یہ میری آپ سے گزارش ہے. یہ اس لیے باتیں کہتا رہتا ہوں کہ وہ دل دکھی ہو جاتا ہے اس ملک کے لیے جو ہماری امیدوں کا مرکز ہے, سب کا اس کا مرکز ہے. ये पाकिस्तान कोई छोटा मुल्क नहीं है, बड़ा मुल्क है, ये अल्लाह के फजल से सारे इस्लामी मुल्कों से बड़ा मुल्क है। लेकिन यह है कि सब चीज़ मौजूद है, बस उसको रास्ता दिखाने वाला कोई शख्स हो जाए, मिल जाएगा। उसमें मेरी यही गुजारिश थी कि आप हज़रात जो यहाँ पर बैठे हैं, जो गौर व फिक्र करते हैं, अपना वक्त देते हैं, आपने अपना काम जारी रखना इस मुल्क की फलाह बहबूद के लिए, इस खिते में हिंदुस्तान की बालादस्ती को रोकने के लिए। वो कायद-ए-आज़म, आखिरी जुमले से ख़त्म करता हूँ। कायद-ए-आज़म ने कहा था कायरा में मुसलमानों को, उन्होंने कहा था कि ये क्यों आप करते हैं, इतने हैं तो एक हिंदुस्तान। उन्होंने कहा था तुमने गोरा साम्राज्य देखा, काला साम्राज्य नहीं देखा। आज कश्मीर से देखने पूछें काला साम्राज्य क्या करता है। ये कायरा में कहा था उस मर्द मोमिन ने कि तुमने गोरे रंग का साम्राज्य देखा, काला साम्राज्य नहीं देखा। तो इन अल्फाज से आपसे जाता हूँ, आपका शुक्रिया आपका।
Prime Minister, thank you very much. For the benefit of our overseas guests, I will briefly flag principal points. Firstly, the Prime Minister said we in Pakistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir should realistically be brutally honest and appraise India's capacity, its intentions, its role, its strength. Number one. Number two, he stressed that without the active participation of the Azad Jammu and Kashmir leadership in forums outside Pakistan, the real message will never be delivered. Azad Jammu and Kashmiris must be part and parcel of any strategy of any effort by Pakistan to go outside and reach out to the world. Third, we need to concentrate not on the entire 193 countries, it's too large a canvas for us to address. Specifically, identify the 12 to 15 countries that play a major role in shaping the world's economy, in shaping the world's discourse, and exert influence. And we should target the parliaments of those countries. Those segments of those countries where opinions are formed, research conducted, strategies recommended, policies made and implemented. He regretted the deep schisms and partisanship that divide and weaken our own parts of the world. And he then remembered not only himself but other colleagues here who have been deeply personally affected by this enormous tragedy of the past 72 years and more. And then he concluded with a quotation from the founder of Pakistan, Quaid-i-Azam University, who said, you may have witnessed, and he didn't say it in a pejorative, racist way. He said, you have seen Western or white colonialism, but I caution you about dark and indigenous colonialism. And that's what he ended on. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Now I would request His Excellency Prime Minister Azad Jammu and Kashmir to please present souvenirs to our honorable speakers for today's seminar. I request Air Commodore Khalid Iqbal to please receive his souvenir. Now I request Dr. Roger to please come forward. Unfortunately, Professor Yashpal Tandon has left us, so I request his friend and colleague, Professor Roger, to please receive his souvenir too. Now I request Dr. Asma Shakir Khwaja to please receive her souvenir. Syed Iftikhar Gilani, Dr Nazir Hussain, Dr Fazl Hadi Wazeen, Dr Halil Toker, now I will request His Excellency Prime Minister to please present souvenir to Javed Jabbar Sahab. Javed Jabbar Sahab. Dr. Akis Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Akis. Now I would request Javed Jabbar Sahab to please present the souvenir to Prime Minister, Azad Jammu and Kashmir.